Chapter 221. Birthday. Back then, in the Yi family, he and his sister could not even have enough food and clothing, let alone a birthday celebration. To him, it was already a blessing to be able to survive with his sister. Usually, when he and his sister could eat a bowl of noodles, it was the happiest time. In front of Yi Xian, Mo Yunqi patted Yi Xian's shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" Yi Xian collected his thoughts, smiled and said, "How did you know that today is my birthday?" Mo Yunqi looked at Jianji, who was not far away. "Sister Ji said it." Jianji. Yi Xian turned to look at Jianji, who was expressionless, nibbling on the chicken leg, and did not say anything. "Come, let's eat." Mo Yunqi suddenly pulled Yi Xian to sit down. He placed a dish in front of Yi Xian and smiled. "This is a plate of stir-fried potatoes that I personally made. Come and try it." Yi Xian looked down at the plate in front of him, his expression stiff. "How is this a damn potato? This is clearly mud." Yi Xian thought for a moment, then said seriously, "Actually, I may not be hungry." Mo Yunqi's face darkened. "This is our painstaking effort, Bandit Yi. You can't not give us face." Yi Xian was a little helpless. He picked up a piece of chopsticks and put it in his mouth. After a moment, his mouth began to twitch, but very quickly, Yi Xian's expression returned to normal. He picked up a few pieces and ate while saying, "Delicious. Really delicious." Mo Yunqi was stunned, then said with some excitement, "Really?" Yi Xian nodded seriously, "More real than real gold." Bai Zai's face was full of disbelief. He walked to Yi Xian's side, picked up a piece. After taking a bite, he blinked, then looked at Mo Yunqi. "Delicious." Mo Yunqi laughed and patted Bai Zai's shoulder. "I already said, what can stump me, Mo Yunqi? Nothing." With that, he picked up a piece for himself. The next moment, he ran to the door and started vomiting. Not only Mo Yunqi, but Yi Xian and Bai Zai also started to vomit crazily. A moment later, the three of them gulped down water. At this moment, Jianji walked over to Yi Xian with a braised fish. She just looked at Yi Xian. Clearly, she had made this and wanted Yi Xian to try it. Yi Xian faced the plate in front of him. On the plate, a fish was twitching alive. Yi Xian's expression froze. His heart was racing. At the side, Mo Yunqi kindly reminded, "Big Sister Ji, this fish seems to be alive." Jianji shot a glance at Mo Yunqi, his expression somewhat unfriendly. The latter's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly said, No, I saw wrongly. This fish is dead." Although Jianji was usually taciturn, in the entire Blue Waves Academy, there was no one who wasn't afraid of her. Because if she was angry, she was truly terrifying. She could chase you for 3 days and 3 nights. At the side, Bai Zai's brain was clearly short-circuited. He looked at the fish on the plate. It's clearly alive. And it's still moving. At this moment, Jianji suddenly drew her blade and slashed at Bai Zai. The latter's expression changed drastically, and he blocked with his arms. Bang! The two of them retreated rapidly, and this time, they retreated for over 30 meters. But the next moment, Jianji rushed forward again and slashed down with her blade. Seeing Bai Zai being chased by Jianji, Yi Xian and Mo Yunqi laughed heartily. After a quarter of an hour, the four of them sat around the table. Yi Xian took out a blade. When this blade appeared, it immediately attracted the attention of Jianji, who was opposite Yi Xian. True grade middle grade blade. The blade was about 3 feet long, and the blade was rather thin. It was shaped like a willow leaf, and the blade was extremely thin. Moreover, it emitted a cold blade light. Before Yi Xian could speak, Jianji stretched out his hand. His meaning was self-evident. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, and he passed the blade to Jianji. Jianji put the blade away, and her eyes were filled with undisguised fondness. Yi Xian faced Bai Zai and Mo Yunqi, but Mo Yunqi suddenly shook his head. "The two of us don't want it." Yi Xian didn't understand and asked, "Why?" Mo Yunqi smiled bitterly. "The two of us can't always rely on you. If we do, we'll only become more and more useless in the long run. If we want equipment, we'll fight for it ourselves." Actually, there was another reason that he didn't say, and that was that they didn't want the relationship between them and Yi Xian to change. It was normal for brothers to help each other, but if it was always Yi Xian who helped them, the relationship between them might change over time. Even if there was only a small possibility, they didn't want it to become a reality. Yi Xian was silent for a long time, and in the end, he nodded slightly. Fine. I respect your choice. Mo Yunqi grinned. Come eat. Everyone's expression instantly froze. A moment later, Yi Xian left the hall. Inside the hall, Bai Zhe glanced at Yi Xian who was leaving and said softly, Did you feel it? Bandit Yi is getting stronger and stronger. Bai Zhe was silent. Jianji was still gnawing on the drumstick. Mo Yunqi shook his head and smiled. He can already kill 10,000 Dharma realm, and none of the three of us can do it. Then work hard. Bai Zhe suddenly stood up and slapped the table, and the entire table instantly shattered. Mo Yunqi looked at Bai Zhe in shock. Bai Zhe clenched his fists. I'm now at the peak of divine unity realm, and the demonic beast bloodline in my body is getting stronger and stronger. Give me another half a year, and I can kill a 10,000 Dharma realm with one punch. Half a year? Mo Yunqi looked at Bai Zhe with disdain. I'll give you 10 years. Half a year. After waiting for you for half a year, Bandit Yi can already kill law-controlling realm. Bai Zhe, Mo Yunqi stood up. I'm going to cultivate. With that he turned and left. Back mountain of Blue Waves Academy. Jiang Jiu brought 10 people to the back of Yi Xian. She walked to Yi Xian's side. The people you want, King Tuoba and I have chosen them. Yi Xian turned around, and in front of him stood 10 people. 5 of them were picked from Blue Waves Academy, and the other 5 were picked from Ning Country's Golden Guards by Tuoba Yen, and they were all top elites. All 10 of them were at the peak of Divine Unity Realm, and their combat strength was top-notch. Seeing Yi Xian, 5 Blue Waves Academy soldiers hurriedly bowed to Yi Xian. Greetings, Dean. As for the 5 Golden Guards, they only bowed slightly to Yi Xian, but their expressions were filled with respect. Yi Xian walked to the front of the 10 people, and in an instant, a powerful sword aura was suddenly emitted from the Lingxiu sword in his hand. This aura instantly forced the 10 people in front of him to retreat, but very quickly, the 5 Blue Waves Academy soldiers stabbed their spears into the ground. With their spears plunged into the ground, the 5 of them forcefully blocked Yi Xian's attack. However, the 5 Golden Guards were still forced to retreat rapidly. They only came to a stop after retreating a few dozen feet. There was still a certain gap between the 5 Golden Guards and the Blue Waves Academy soldiers. At this moment, the 5 Golden Guards' expressions were rather ugly. Being defeated by the Blue Waves Academy soldiers like this, it was clearly very embarrassing. Yi Xian withdrew his sword aura and walked to the front of the 5 Golden Guards. I'll give you a chance. If you don't pass, then go back to where you came from. With that, he turned to Jiang Jiu. Let Miss Lu train the 10 of them alone. Jiang Jiu nodded. Leave this matter to me. Yi Xian flicked his finger, and a storage ring flew to Jiang Jiu. Inside this storage ring, there is a supreme-grade spirit vein. This spirit vein should be placed in Blue Waves Academy. Hearing this, Jiang Jiu was delighted. It should be known that if this supreme-grade spirit vein was placed in Blue Waves Academy, it would not only benefit Blue Waves Academy, but also the entire imperial capital of Jiang Country. It could be said that with this supreme-grade spirit vein, Jiang Country would not be too chaotic for the time being. Because with sufficient spiritual qi, the morale of the people would be stable. Soon, Jiang Jiu led the 10 people away. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the sky. Right now, he was already somewhat impatient to go to the central divine continent. At this moment, a figure suddenly landed behind Yi Xian, and Yi Xian turned around in surprise. It was none other than Lian Wanli. Lian Wanli walked over to Yi Xian's side, lightly combed her beautiful hair behind her ear, and said softly, You repelled the Blood Sect and the Joyful Union Sect. Now, many people from the central divine continent don't dare to come to the state of Jiang. As for my Great Cloud Realm, I've killed over 300 experts from the central divine continent, including 6 in the Myriad Dharma realm. As she spoke, she turned to look at Yi Xian. The situation in Azure Prefecture has stabilized for the time being. Now, there are only 2 problems left. First, the origin of Azure Prefecture's local spirit vein. Azure Prefecture's origin has been greatly damaged, and if we want to repair it, we must use spirit veins, not supreme-grade spirit veins, but better ones. And Azure Prefecture doesn't have such spirit veins. Go to the Central Divine Continent? Yi Xian asked. Lien Wanli nodded. We must go to the Central Divine Continent. Of course, the urgent matter at hand is not to go to the Central Divine Continent, but to resist the experts from the Central Divine Continent and Blue Waves Prefecture. I've already received intelligence that Blue Waves Prefecture has become a wasteland. Those people who were in Blue Waves Prefecture have already rushed to our Azure Prefecture. In addition, the conflicts between the various forces of the Blue Firmament world are intensifying. I fear that the Realm Defense Alliance will find it difficult to suppress them. But Yi Xian was puzzled. Even the Realm Defense Alliance will find it difficult to suppress them. Lien Wanli nodded slightly. As far as I know, the Realm Defense Alliance seems to have encountered trouble. It seems that a monster beast is specifically looking for trouble with them. At this point, she looked at Yi Xian. Do you know what that monster beast is called? Yi Xian shook his head. How would I know? Yi Xian. Lien Wanli stared straight at Yi Xian. That monster beast says that its name is Yi Xian. Yi Xian was stunned. Yi Xian? Yi Xian? What the hell? Lien Wanli just stared at Yi Xian. No one knew what she was thinking. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this moment he seemed to have thought of something and his expression changed. Yi Xian. Monster beast. It can't be that god from the second floor, right? Cold sweat dripped down from Yi Xian's forehead. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. Because it couldn't be such a coincidence. However, he couldn't understand why this god from the second floor would fight with the Realm Defense Alliance. It was fine if they were fighting, but why did he tell others that it was called Yi Xian? Wasn't this inviting trouble for him? At this moment, an armored woman suddenly appeared beside Lien Wanli. The armored woman knelt on one knee. Your Majesty, we have received intelligence that in at most 2 days, the experts from Blue Waves Prefecture will arrive at Myriad Mound Mountain. Lien Wanli suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. This time, Green Prefecture has suffered heavy losses. We can't let these people enter Green Prefecture, otherwise, who knows how many people will die in Green Prefecture. As she spoke, she pointed to the sky. Bring your people and follow me to Myriad Mound Mountain. We will save the world, save Blue Firmament world, save billions of lives. Yi Xian was silent and didn't say anything. Lien Wanli retracted her jade-like hand and said indifferently, they came from Blue Waves Prefecture, and all of them are filthy rich. Yi Xian suddenly asked, you just said to save the world? Save Green Prefecture? Save billions of lives? Lien Wanli nodded. Yi Xian said seriously, save the world, save Green Prefecture, save billions of lives. I Yi Xian am duty-bound. Lien Wanli asked, not for wealth. Yi Xian said angrily, am I that kind of person? Chapter 222. On the mountain, Lien Wanli gazed at Yi Xian silently. You're exactly that kind of person. Her tone was firm, and she didn't give him any face at all. Yi Xian's face darkened. Miss Lien, looks like you don't know me well enough. But it doesn't matter. I'm not interested in you anyway. At this moment, Lien Wanli, who was right in front of him, suddenly rushed forward and slapped his palm towards him. It was as fast as lightning. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly. He took a step forward and slammed his fist against Lien Wanli's palm. However, his expression changed drastically because this punch felt like it had hit a piece of cotton. It was soft. Yi Xian was just about to withdraw his fist when Lien Wanli suddenly grabbed his wrist. In the next moment, Lien Wanli pulled his wrist towards herself. At the same time, she struck her knee against Yi Xian's abdomen. Bang! Yi Xian instantly retreated over 300 meters. Yi Xian said angrily, are you crazy? Lien Wanli glanced at Yi Xian and said indifferently, my hands are itchy. I want to hit someone. Hearing this, Yi Xian was enraged. His figure trembled, and he shot towards Lien Wanli. Lien Wanli was expressionless. She tapped the ground lightly with the tip of her foot, and her figure floated forward. Her figure was slightly blurry and strange. Because her figure was slightly distorted, and it wasn't just her, even the space around her was slightly distorted. Yi Xian arrived and punched. This punch was enhanced with battle intent. However, in the next moment, Yi Xian retreated rapidly, and this time he retreated over 300 meters. After Yi Xian stopped, he didn't attack again, and his expression was rather solemn. Lian Wanli placed her right hand behind her back and said indifferently, "Attack!" Yi Xian didn't hesitate at all. He pressed his fingers together and pointed forward. A ray of sword light flashed and slashed towards Lian Wanli. Lian Wanli didn't dodge at all. When the sword light was half a zhang away from her, it suddenly stopped and started to distort. No, it wasn't the sword light that was distorting, it was the space, and the sword light was being restricted by space. Just like that, the wisp of sword light became more and more distorted and finally disappeared. Yi Xian was silent. Lian Wanli walked in front of Yi Xian. The 10,000 Dharma realm is divided into the pseudo-10,000 Dharma realm and the true 10,000 Dharma realm. The so-called pseudo-10,000 Dharma realm is just reaching the 10,000 Dharma realm, but without truly comprehending the mysteries of the 10,000 Dharma realm. The secret of the 10,000 laws realm was the use of space. Only those who have reached the 10,000 Dharma realm can truly grasp the mysteries of space and use them. As she spoke, she looked directly at Yi Xian. There are very few Dharma realm experts in the Azure province who can do this, but there are many in the central divine prefecture. It's very likely that we'll encounter such a powerhouse on this trip to Wanqiu Mountain. If you still look down on the Dharma realm, you'll definitely suffer a great loss. Yi Xian was silent for a long time. Finally, he nodded. I understand. The Lian Wanli before him was undoubtedly the true 10,000 Dharma realm. Although he hadn't fought to the death with Lian Wanli just now, he could already feel the terror of the true 10,000 Dharma realm from their two exchanges. The path of the sword Dao could never be taken lightly. At this time, Lian Wanli added, the trip to Wanqiu Mountain will take a day and a half. Make some arrangements, then set off immediately. With that, she and the armored woman turned and left. When Yi Xian returned to Blue Wave Hall, he called Ji Anji, Mo Yunqi, and the others over. All the core members of Blue Wave Academy were present in the hall. 2 hours later, Yi Xian left Blue Wave Hall. He only brought 3 people with him, Ji Anji, Mo Yunqi, and Bai Zhe. He didn't bring the Blue Wave Dao soldiers because there were still many mercenaries and sects in the central divine prefecture. These Blue Wave Dao soldiers had to remain in Azure province to intimidate these mercenaries and sections. On the cloud ship, Yi Xian stood at the bow of the ship. He leaned against the pole with both hands, deep in thought. Save Azure province. He never thought he would one day accomplish such a magnificent feat, because he never thought of himself as a hero. In fact, he didn't even think of himself as a good person. But now, he actually wanted to save Azure province. Even he found it hard to believe. When did he become so great? However, he really had no choice but to go. The state of Jiang was his country, his home. Here, there were his friends, his brothers, and the students of his academy. The incident in Two Realm City made him realize how evil a person could be. There was no limit to the evil of human nature. And now, these experts from Blue Wave Prefecture were no longer humans. They were all wolves, bloodthirsty wolves. If these people were allowed to step into Azure Province, the country of Jiang, and the country of Ning, one could imagine how terrifying it would be. In the world of martial artists, the strong rarely showed mercy to the weak. Most of the time, it was the strong who bullied and plundered the weak. Yi Xian didn't want to be a savior, nor had he ever wanted to be one. He only wanted everyone around him to be safe and sound. In other words, not even the heavenly emperor could touch my people. At this moment, a fragrant wind blew over, and a woman appeared next to Yi Xian. Lian Wanli. Lian Wanli looked down at the cloud ship and said softly, "Look at these great rivers and mountains. How beautiful! But under such beautiful scenery are countless corpses and blood." As she spoke up to this point, she suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Before this, I always felt that Qingzhou had become like this because of that sword strike from your master. But later, I felt that I was wrong. Azure Province became like this because of human nature. Good people can become evil, and bad people can become even more evil. Good and evil. Yi Xian was a little dazed. His sword Dao was the good and evil sword Dao, but what was good? What was evil? Yi Xian stood at the bow of the ship, as if he was meditating. Wanli glanced at Yi Xian, then turned and left. She knew that Yi Xian might have comprehended something. The cloud ship continued forward, getting closer and closer to Myriad Mountain, blood sect of the divine central continent. 30 or so people stood in a gloomy hall, and the smell of blood was extremely strong. A black-robed middle-aged man sat at the head of the hall. He was the sect master of the blood sect, Shuiyu. Below him, an old man had a ferocious expression as he recounted what had happened in Azure Province. My blood sect's grand elder was killed, and more than 30 elite disciples were slaughtered. Their heads were hung on the city walls of Two World City by Yi Xian, and their corpses were hunted by wild dogs and vultures. At this point he looked at Shuiyu. The young sect master was also beheaded by Yi Xian in Two World City. The hall fell silent. Shuiyu was expressionless, and no one knew what he was thinking. After a moment of silence, an old man suddenly said angrily, "This Yi Xian has gone too far. He doesn't respect our blood sect at all." As he spoke, he looked at Shuiyu. "Sect master, we must take revenge." Most of the people present nodded in agreement. Shuiyu glanced at the old man who spoke. "Do you know anything about Yi Xian?" The old man was slightly taken aback. He shook his head. "How could I know about the barbarians of Azure Province?" Shuiyu suddenly interrupted the old man. "Barbarians? The barbarians you speak of can already kill 10,000 Dharma realm cultivators at the Divine Unity realm. Furthermore, he's a sword master who's not even 20 years old." The old man's face was filled with shock. "This?" Shuiyu slowly closed his eyes. "We must take revenge. However, we can't fight him head-on like this. We have to borrow his strength. I'll personally go to the Devil Sect. Before that, no one is allowed to step into Azure Province to look for Yi Xian." After saying that, he disappeared. The Joyful Union Sect. At this moment, the Joyful Union Sect was just like the Blood Sect. The entire sect was furious after learning that several 10,000 Dharma realm cultivators had been killed. At this moment, the Joyful Union Hall was extremely lively. Everyone was discussing how to punish Yi Xian and avenge Old Man Joyful and the others. The Joyful Union Sect's sect master was a middle-aged man called Li Yuan. From the beginning until now, he hadn't said a single word. He only listened quietly. In the hall, the voices gradually quieted down. Many people looked at Li Yuan, because at this moment, they realized that no matter what they said, they needed the person in front of them to agree. Seeing that everyone had stopped, Li Yuan opened his eyes and said indifferently, 2 points. First, Yi Xian destroyed Azure Province's Kuraki Academy and forced the Dark World to retreat from Azure Province. Second, he's still alive and the Frigid North sect hasn't given us any explanation. Everyone looked at each other. At this moment, they realized that things weren't that simple. Li Yuan glanced at everyone. Kuraki Academy is much stronger than our Joyful Union sect. However, even they can't do anything to Yi Xian. Do you think he's that simple? An old man suddenly said, "Are we just going to let this matter go?" Li Yuan looked at the old man. "If we continue to target him, the Joyful Union sect may be completely destroyed." The old man was silent. Li Yuan slowly closed his eyes. "Pass down my order. All disciples of the Joyful Union sect are not allowed to step into Azure Province. As for revenge, I will personally investigate this person and decide whether or not to take revenge." With that, he stood up and disappeared from the hall. On the cloud ship, standing at the bow of the ship, Yi Xian was still thinking about one question. Good and evil. His sword principle was the good and evil sword principle. Comprehending the good and evil sword intent was just the beginning, just the beginning. His sword Dao and sword intent still had a very, very long way to go. As for good and evil, he didn't have an accurate concept of what was good and what was evil. Because many times, a good person could also be evil and a bad person might not be really evil, Just like that, Yi Xian stood for a day and a night. On the second day, the cloud ship had entered a mountain range. During this time, Wang Lin and the others didn't disturb Yi Xian. About 2 hours later, the cloud ship stopped. Wang Lin led Azua to the cloud ship. Behind them were Mo Yunqi and the other two, as well as little monster Tuoba. This girl was the last to chase after them. In front of them were 2 towering mountains that pierced the clouds. The 2 mountains were separated by about 300 meters and just happened to be a passageway. Beyond the 2 mountains was a boundless ocean. This was the only passageway from the divine central continent and Azure Wave province to Azure province. The passageway between the 2 mountains was called Azure Province Path. Once one entered this path, they would reach Azure Province. Wang Lin stood at the very front. Today, she wore a black phoenix robe and a black phoenix coronet on her head. Her brows were slightly thick, and she looked somewhat cold and solemn. At this moment, a man in black suddenly swept over from the distance. He was extremely fast, arriving in front of Wang Lin in the blink of an eye. He knelt on one knee. "My king, the experts of the divine central continent from Azure Wave province are about to enter Azure Province Path." Wang Lin said indifferently, "How many?" The man in black said, "Among them, there are 16 in the Myriad Dharma realm, 321 at the peak of the Divine Unity realm, 6 first-rate mercenary groups, and countless disciples of aristocratic families and independent cultivators. Besides that, we've also discovered 7 experts on the demon-level genius rankings. They are ranked 26th, 17th, 15th, 13th, 10th, and 4th. 4th. Little monster Tuoba suddenly looked at the man in black in astonishment. The man in black nodded. "Absolutely." Little monster Tuoba blinked when she heard this, and then she looked up at the sky. "The weather today isn't good. It's not suitable for battle." Wang Lin nodded. "This king thinks, that's reasonable. Retreat." With that, she turned around and left. The crowd was speechless. Chapter 223. Retreat. Mo Yunqi and the others were dumbfounded. "They're retreating for real. Your Majesty." At this moment, the armored woman beside Wang Lin suddenly said, "If we retreat, these people will go deep into the hinterland of Qingzhou. At that time, Qingzhou will be covered with corpses." Wang Lin stopped moving. She slowly closed her eyes and didn't speak. Everyone was silent. This was a barrier. If they abandoned this barrier, it meant that those people would enter the land of Qingzhou. Given the madness of these people, the entire Qingzhou would immediately become purgatory on earth. Whether it was Great Cloud Empire, Jiang Country, or Ning Country, none of them would be spared. Everyone was looking at Wang Lin, waiting for her reply. After a while, Wang Lin turned to look at the distant Qingzhou path. Many cloud ships could be vaguely seen on the sea surface outside the 2 mountains. "They're here." A moment later, Wang Lin suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian on the cloud ship not far away. At this moment, Yi Xian on the cloud ship moved. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Xian walked down from the cloud ship. He walked to Wang Lin's side and faced the distant Qingzhou path. "You're here?" Wang Lin nodded and asked, "Have you thought it through?" Yi Xian nodded. "Good and evil." His understanding was that regardless of whether it was good or evil, he would protect those who should be protected with his life. Those who should be killed, he would kill with his life. It was that simple. Sword Dao, there was really no need to make it too complicated and mysterious. Everything should be simple. After thinking it through, Yi Xian found that there were no changes in his sword intent and sword principle. However, he didn't care. With his mind connected, his sword was unstoppable. Without the doubts in his heart, his sword would be more decisive and faster. In fact, he didn't realize that his sword intent had changed, it had become more substantial. At this moment, the cloud ships outside the 2 mountains had stopped. Soon, some people got off the cloud ships and went straight to Yi Xian's group. After those people got off the cloud ship, they all started cheering. They who came from Kanglin province could be said to have made a lot of money. Each of them was overflowing with wealth. Now, the Azure province would be the next place they would plunder. All of them were cheering excitedly as they ran. In the crowd far away, a man ran extremely fast. As he ran, he sang excitedly, "Qingzhou is good, Qingzhou is wonderful, Qingzhou's girls are beautiful. Master is here, Master is here, once Master is here, the girls call. Ha! Brothers, Qingzhou is right in front of us. After entering Qingzhou, you can choose any girl you want." Ha! The man suddenly raised his head and looked into the distance. When he saw Jianji and the other two women beside Yixin, his eyes lit up and he said excitedly, "Brothers, these three girls look pretty good. We can quench our thirst first." Ha! At this moment, a sword suddenly pierced through the man's forehead. The sword flew out from the back of the man's head and blood splattered everywhere. The sword made a circle in the air before flying back to Yixin. Those people stopped in front of Yixin and his companions. Some of their eyes were filled with vigilance. At this moment, a young man suddenly stood out and stared at Yixin. "Who are you?" Yixin said indifferently, "Qingzhou does not welcome you. Go back." The young man's lips curled into a sinister smile. "Go back? What if I don't?" A sword instantly pierced through the young man's forehead. The young man's eyes were wide open as he looked at Yixin in disbelief. Yixin opened his palm and the elegant spirit sword flew back into his hand. He faced the young man in the distance. "I'll send you off." The young man fell straight to the ground. Beside Yixin, Lian Wanli glanced at him with a trace of a smile in her eyes. She liked this temper. In the distance, the group of people stopped. There were a total of 600 to 700 people. Among them, the majority were at the Divine Unity realm and the weakest was at the Ethereal Opening realm. Furthermore, there were more than 10 at the Myriad Law realm. It had to be said that such a lineup was extremely terrifying. At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared not far away from Yixin's group. The old man glanced at Yixin and Lian Wanli with a trace of fear in his eyes. After a moment of silence, the old man looked at Yixin. "You are?" Yixin said indifferently, "Qingzhou, Yixin." "Yixin?" The old man and the people behind him looked at each other. They had never heard of him. The old man said in a deep voice, "You are from Qingzhou?" Yixin nodded. Hearing this, the old man narrowed his eyes. "You are trying to stop us from entering Qingzhou?" Yixin nodded again. The old man's expression gradually turned cold. "I'm afraid you won't have enough people." Yixin held the spirit elegant sword in his hand and slowly walked towards the old man. "Let's try." The old man did not waste any more words. He immediately extended his right hand and clawed at Yixin from a distance. In an instant, a giant energy claw that was hundreds of feet long suddenly appeared above Yixin's head out of thin air, and then fell heavily. Yixin leaped and slashed down with his sword. Boom! The giant claw suddenly exploded. In the next moment, Yixin had already arrived above the old man's head. At the same time, a ray of sword light slashed down towards the old man's head. The old man's expression changed drastically. He clenched his right hand into a fist and punched towards the sky. On the fist, a powerful force condensed in an instant, and then suddenly exploded. Boom! Along with a deafening explosion, the old man was instantly blasted hundreds of meters away. As soon as he stopped, a flying sword slashed across the battlefield. The old man didn't see the flying sword, but he could feel it. When he felt the power within the flying sword, the old man was horrified. He suddenly took out a black shield and placed it in front of him. The profound energy within his body surged madly into the shield. As the profound energy surged, the shield instantly emitted a dazzling black light. At this moment, the sword had just arrived. A sword directly pierced into the black shield, causing it to tremble violently before exploding with a loud bang. The sword pierced straight into the black shield. The old man's head flew into the air. Everyone present was dumbfounded. A divine combination realm expert killing a Dharma realm expert? Yixin walked to the old man's corpse. He looked up at the hundreds of people in front of him and pointed the sword in his hand towards the ground. Everyone, I Yixin, have taken care of Qingzhou. Can you give me some face and don't attack? The hundreds of people looked at Yi Xian. No one spoke, but no one retreated either. Moreover, everyone's eyes were cold, and some people's eyes were filled with undisguised killing intent. At this moment, a man walked out. He looked at Yi Xian with a gloomy expression. "Your Excellency, are you trying to block our path to wealth?" Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. "I have no choice. I am the Dean of Blue Waves Academy, and I am also a citizen of Jiang Country. Jiang Country has helped me time and time again. In addition, I am a kingdom scholar of Ning Country, and I have promised the king of Ning Country to protect Ning Country. If you come to Qingzhou, I am afraid that Jiang Country and Ning Country will be plunged into misery and suffering. Sigh, it's not easy for me either. Really, it's not easy for everyone. Let's understand each other and everything will be peaceful." *T. At this moment, not far from the right of Yi Xian, a man suddenly said angrily, "Understand each other? We came from thousands of miles away, and you want us to go back just because of a sentence from you?" Yi Xian suddenly loosened his grip, and the exquisite sword in his hand suddenly flew out. The voice of the man who spoke earlier stopped abruptly, because a sword had already pierced through the space between his eyebrows. He was unable to retaliate at all. In front of Yi Xian, the eyes of the few hundred people were filled with killing intent, but there was also a hint of graveness. Yi Xian gently waved his right hand, and the exquisite sword flew back into his hand. He held the exquisite sword and pointed it at the few hundred people in front of him. "Who else is unconvinced? Come out." Who else was unconvinced? The scene was incomparably quiet. Not far away, Lian Wanli looked at Yi Xian with a smile in his eyes. "A good man should be like this." Little Demon Tuoba nodded his head, as expected of my friend. Not bad at all." Everyone, not far away, among the few hundred people in front of Yi Xian, a man in a black robe walked out. The man sized up Yi Xian. "If you want to scare us off with your strength alone, forgive my bluntness, but you're not qualified." With that, the man narrowed his eyes, and his right hand, which was hidden in his sleeve, slowly clenched. As long as Yi Xian spoke, he would immediately attack and catch Yi Xian off guard. However, Yi Xian did not say anything. He raised his sword and charged directly at the man. Seeing that, the man was slightly stunned. He did not even say a word? Fight directly? Did he have to be so direct? Without thinking too much, the man suddenly opened his arms, and two short sabers suddenly appeared. The next moment, he charged directly at Yi Xian. Everywhere he passed by, saber gleams sputtered, and the ground was a mess. It was incomparably terrifying. The distance between them grew closer and closer. When they were less than 3 m away, Yi Xian suddenly stabbed forward with his sword, and a cold light flashed at the tip of his sword. Meanwhile, the man's sabers slashed ferociously. Every single time they descended, a strand of saber chi would slash down. In less than half a breath of time, he'd already swung his saber 100 times. The 100 strands of saber chi practically overlapped as they slashed down, and the formidable pressure they emanated caused some of the people in the surroundings to feel suffocated. The saber master! He was borrowing the momentum of the attack. As soon as the saber and sword collided, bang! A deafening explosion resounded abruptly. In an instant, both Yi Xian and the man retreated explosively by over 100 m. As soon as they stopped moving, the man suddenly joined his sabers together, and then he suddenly slashed at Yi Xian from afar. A strand of white saber chi flashed, and everywhere it passed, the ground split open and was so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. Yi Xian suddenly pressed his fingers together and pointed forward. A sword suddenly flew out from the sword chest behind him, and it was swift like a bolt of lightning. The man's saber chi was instantly slashed into pieces, but the sword didn't stop. It continued forward and slashed at the man. The man's pupils constricted slightly when he witnessed this scene, and he suddenly tossed the saber in his hand. However, the saber had only just come into contact with Yi Xian's sword when it instantly shattered. At this moment, the man had retreated into the crowd, but Yi Xian's sword didn't stop. The expressions of those people changed drastically when they saw the sword slash towards them, and they retreated in succession. In the end, the sword only stopped after it killed 5 people. However, just as the sword was about to fly back, a hand suddenly grabbed it. It was a man. Taba stared fixedly at the man from afar. The 4th on the demon-level genius rankings, Xiahou Zhao. Xiahou Zhao raised his head to look at Yi Xian. Someone asked me to tell you something. Young miss and isn't worthy of trash like you. Yi Xian shook his head and chuckled, and his smile was slightly savage. What the fuck does the matter between me and Xiao have to do with all of you? I'll like whoever I want to like. Let me tell you, I want Xiao to be worthy of me. In Qingzhou, I, Yi Xian, will King protect her. As soon as he finished speaking, the Lingxiu sword in his hand suddenly turned dark. P.S. There was a patient in the hospital today. He was very young, in his 20s. I took a glance, and it was a fantasy book. It wasn't mine. So, I chatted with him for a while. Because I'm more familiar with him, we chatted very enthusiastically. We talked about all sorts of very popular novels and also about the authors. Finally, we talked about a very handsome author, Green Phoenix Peak. I asked him if he had read Green Phoenix's book. He said he had read Invincible Sword Realm, and that it was written very trashy, and the author was an idiot. Before I left, I kicked a pair of his shoes under the opposite bed. Did I go too far? Chapter 224. Evil Thoughts. The world was divided into yin and yang, and all things reinforced and restrained each other. Humans were also divided into good and evil. Humans were born with good nature, but in fact, they were also accompanied by evil. For a powerful person, a good thought could bring prosperity to the world, but an evil thought would naturally lead to the destruction of all things. For Yi Xian, if you were good to him, he would be good, but if you were evil to him, he would be 10 times, no, 100 times more evil than you. He would treat people how they treated him. Yi Xian would never repay kindness with evil, but he would never repay evil with good. The moment the evil thought sword intent appeared, the sword in Xiahou Zhao's hand suddenly trembled violently, then instantly turned dark, and Xiahou Zhao's hand began to disappear. Xiahou Zhao's expression changed drastically, and he quickly released his right hand. The sword instantly flew back into the sword box behind Yi Xian. Xiahou Zhao's expression was extremely solemn. At this moment, a layer of skin had disappeared from his right palm. If he had been a little slower, his entire hand would have disappeared. What kind of sword intent was this? Xiahou Zhao raised his head to look at Yi Xian in the distance, but Yi Xian had suddenly disappeared. Xiahou Zhao narrowed his eyes, and in his gaze, a ray of sword light was getting closer and closer to him. It was a swift sword. Only a few people in the crowd could clearly see the sword's trajectory. Xiahou Zhao tilted his body slightly and directly dodged the sword. After the sword passed, Yi Xian was already more than a dozen feet behind Xiahou Zhao. He dodged it. Yi Xian's face was expressionless, but his heart was slightly on guard. No enemy could be taken lightly or carelessly, not to mention that the person in front of him was an existence ranked 4th on the demon-level geniuses list. How could this kind of person be an idiot? Xiahou Zhao turned to look at Yi Xian with a cold expression. The number 1 genius of Qingzhou? You really are a frog in a well, ignorant? At this point, Xiahou Zhao's expression changed slightly because a flying sword was slashing towards him from afar. The speed was so fast that it had completely exceeded the scope of the divine combination stage. It should be said that even some of the 10,000 laws stage couldn't possess such speed. This sword had far surpassed the average Dharma realm expert. Xiahou Zhao only took a step to the right. This step was enough to dodge the lightning-fast flying sword. It was extremely easy. This is the number 1 genius of the Qingzhou? At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly walked out. He looked at Yi Xian, his eyes filled with mockery. So the number 1 genius of the Green Province is such trash. You, in the distance, Yi Xian casually pointed out, and a wisp of sword light shot out. Chi! The middle-aged man's voice stopped abruptly because a sword had pierced through his throat. The middle-aged man hugged the sword tightly with both hands. His eyes were filled with terror as blood spurted out from his throat like a fountain. Yi Xian turned to face the middle-aged man. "I hate people who talk." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and the sword in the middle-aged man's throat flew back and landed firmly in his palm. As he held the sword, Yi Xian didn't waste any words. He turned around and charged towards Xiahou Zhao, who was in the distance. There was a trace of seriousness in Xiahou Zhao's eyes when he saw Yi Xian charging towards him. Even though he'd easily dodged 2 attacks from Yi Xian, it hadn't been easy at all. Yi Xian's strength had slightly exceeded his expectations. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had arrived in front of Xiahou Zhao with his sword in hand. He raised his sword and stabbed. A powerful sword aura instantly enveloped Xiahou Zhao. As soon as the sword aura was unleashed, the ground where both of them stood instantly cracked. Xiahou Zhao was expressionless, and he didn't dodge. Without any suspense, Yi Xian's sword pierced through the space between Xiahou Zhao's eyebrows. A tearing sound resounded. It was the sound of the air being torn apart. "It's fake." Yi Xian's reaction was extremely fast. He turned around and slashed with his sword, but Xiahou Zhao was half a beat too slow, and a fist had already smashed against his chest. Bang! Yi Xian's figure shook violently, yet he wasn't blasted flying. Xiahou Zhao's expression instantly turned grim when he witnessed this scene, and he flashed backwards. This flash had directly flashed over 30 m away. Moreover, the clothes in front of his chest had split apart, and there was a deep mark on his chest. Xiahou Zhao's expression was rather savage as he raised his head to look at Yi Xian. There was a strand of white energy at Yi Xian's stomach, and it was exactly that strand of white energy that had forcefully blocked that punch of his. Sword intent. 2 forms of sword intent. Xiahou Zhao slowly clenched his right fist. After a moment of silence, his figure suddenly soared into the sky. A strand of destructive pressure suddenly appeared in midair, and as soon as this pressure appeared, the ground in an area of 300 m actually trembled violently. Countless people in the surroundings were horrified, and they retreated explosively. The expressions of Imo Yunqi and the others instantly became solemn when they witnessed this scene. Lian Wanli suddenly said in a light voice, "A heaven-rank martial technique." In the distant sky, the pressure emanating from Xiahou Zhao was still rising madly. At this moment, his tightly clenched right fist was emanating a strand of fiery red light, and strand after strand of formidable pressure was ceaselessly pouring out from his right hand. The might of the heavens and the earth. A heaven-rank martial technique possessed the might of the heavens and the earth. On the ground below, the spirit gray sword in Yi Xian's hand had transformed into the heavenly lightning that Yi Ling had given him. At the moment he grasped the heaven-rank sword, the sword aura contained within his sword instantly rose explosively. This aura was like a torrent that shot into the sky, and it forcefully blocked the aura emanated by Xiahou Zhao. In midair, Xiahou Zhao's expression was savage. His figure spun, and then he suddenly punched downwards. Borrowing the heaven's punch, world crumble. As soon as he finished speaking, the aura within Xiahou Zhao's fist actually instantly rose explosively, and it had increased by at least 5 times or more. On the other hand, Yi Xian's sword aura was instantly suppressed. At the same time, a destructive force swept down from the sky, and it seemed as if it intended to destroy the ground. Under this formidable force and pressure, Yi Xian was like a small boat amidst a tempestuous storm, and he could be swallowed at any moment. Under the gazes of everyone, Yi Xian suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground, and his entire body transformed into a black ray of light that shot into the sky, deciding life and death with a single strike. At the moment that Yi Xian executed deciding life and death with a single strike, the sword aura contained within his sword instantly rose explosively, and the formidable sword aura directly suppressed the aura emanated by Xiahou Zhao. Moreover, everywhere the sword light passed, everything was torn apart like a hot knife through butter. This strike could be said to be his strongest strike. Especially when it was enhanced by the evil sword intent, the might of this strike was sufficient to destroy the heavens and the earth. Rumble, an explosion suddenly resounded in the sky, and then countless rays of sword light and fist radiance shot wildly in all directions. The surrounding people were greatly shocked, and they hurriedly retreated once more. This time, they retreated hundreds of meters away. As for where Yi Xian and Xiahou Zhao stood, they had already been engulfed by the countless rays of sword light and airwaves. However, explosions still rang out amidst the sword light and airwaves. Clearly, the two of them were still engaged in an intense battle. This went on for an unknown amount of time. The sword radiance and the airwaves gradually dispersed. Yi Xian and Xiahou Zhao showed up in everyone's sight. At this moment, the two of them were over 60 meters apart. Yi Xian held the Heaven's Thunder Sword and pointed it diagonally at the ground. The Heaven's Thunder Sword was pitch black, and fresh blood continuously dripped from its tip. Meanwhile, Xiahou Zhao stood opposite Yi Xian. At this moment, he had lost his right arm. When they saw that Xiahou Zhao had lost his right arm, the expressions of the people behind him sank. Without a doubt, Xiahou Zhao had lost. Xiahou Zhao glared at Yi Xian. I didn't lose to you. I lost to the heaven-grade sword in your hand. Yi Xian waved the sword in his hand proudly. This sword was given to me by my younger sister. Who can you blame for not having a heaven-grade treasure? Of course, you can blame yourself. Who asked you not to have a younger sister? Xiahou Zhao was speechless. Holding the Heaven's Thunder Sword in his hand, Yi Xian felt very happy. In fact, as long as it was given to him by Yi Ling, he would like it. It was really good to have a younger sister. Of course, please don't be like little demon Tuoba. With such a younger sister, I'm afraid I'll be toyed to death. Xiahou Zhao looked at Yi Xian deeply. I underestimated you. The Situ clan also underestimated you. But don't worry, when I return, they won't underestimate you anymore. At this moment, the Heaven's Thunder Sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly turned into a sword light and shot out. Xiahou Zhao's expression changed drastically. He wanted to use his right hand to block it, but he was shocked to find that his right hand was gone. Because of this pause, the sword instantly pierced through the space between his eyebrows. Pissed. A stream of blood spurted out from the space between Xiahou Zhao's eyebrows. Yi Xian walked slowly to Xiahou Zhao. Return? You still want to return? You're really thinking too much. As he spoke, he waved his right hand, and the storage ring on Xiahou Zhao's finger instantly flew into his hand. After receiving Xiahou Zhao's storage ring, Yi Xian was stunned. In the storage ring, there was a truth-grade superior-grade spear. Apart from that, there were almost 100 million supreme-grade spirit stones. So rich. That was the first thought that appeared in Yi Xian's mind at this moment. The 100 million supreme-grade spirit stones were definitely looted by Xiahou Zhao from Azure Wave Province, and the high-grade superior-grade spear was definitely the same. When he thought up to this point, he gazed at the hundreds of people before him. All of them probably possessed more than half of the Azure Wave Province's wealth. If they were allowed to enter Azure Province, then it was obvious how horrifying the consequences would be for the Jiang Kingdom and Ning Kingdom. At this moment, the eyes of all the hundreds of people were filled with fear. Yi Xian had killed Xiahou Zhao, who was ranked at the 4th position on the demon-level genius rankings, so it meant that his strength had risen to the 4th position. Fear. No one wasn't afraid. But none of them were willing to retreat just like that. They'd arrived at Azure Province, and so long as they could enter Azure Province, then women, money, they could get anything they wanted. If they retreated now, then they would lose a lot. Right at this moment, a hunchbacked old man suddenly stood out. The Law Control Realm. This wasn't the Myriad Dharma realm anymore, it was the Law Control Realm. The hunchbacked old man walked over to Yi Xian, and then he glanced at Yi Xian with an extremely gentle expression. The old man is the Grand Elder of the Dark Darkness sect in the Central Divine Prefecture. Even though my Dark Darkness sect isn't a first-rate power, it has over a dozen Myriad Dharma realm experts, and while there aren't many at the Law Control Realm, there are still a few. When he spoke up to this point, he gazed at Yi Xian and spoke in a slightly apologetic tone. The old man didn't mean to threaten you. Really, he didn't mean to threaten you at all. Don't think too much about it. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he smiled and said, I understand. Right, do you know of Kuraki Academy? The old man nodded. Of course. Yi Xian smiled and said, I annihilated Kuraki Academy. Right? I don't have any backing. Really, I don't have any backing at all. I killed over a dozen myriad Dharma realm experts and a few law control realm experts of Azure Waves Academy. Oh my, what's with that expression, senior? Believe me, it's true. I, Yi Xian, don't have any backing. I did it all by myself. Chapter 225. After he heard Yi Xian, the old man just gazed at Yi Xian with a very calm expression. Yi Xian had a smile on his face, and he seemed very amiable. After a short while passed, the old man grinned, sorry for the disturbance. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. In the end, he didn't choose to attack. He'd heard about Kuraki Academy's actions against Yi Xian in the Central Divine Prefecture, and Kuraki Academy's main academy was even stronger than his sect. However, Kuraki Academy had been destroyed, but Yi Xian was still here. That was sufficient to explain a great deal. He'd reached the law control realm, so he was very clearly aware that there were many people that couldn't be offended. Once he did, then it wouldn't just bring harm to himself, it might bring harm to his sect as well. However, he didn't leave. He just watched from the shadows. Obviously, he wasn't willing to give up. At this moment, not a single one of them dared to step forward when they saw Old Man Tuoba step back. None of them wanted to stand out. However, none of them left. Obviously, they weren't willing to leave just like that. As far as they were concerned, Pine Prefecture was a treasure trove. The treasure was right before their eyes, so none of them were willing to leave just like that. As for Yi Xian, he was clearly aware of that as well. So, he didn't infuriate all of them, because he would definitely be unable to defeat all of them if they attacked him together. Moreover, every single one of them had ulterior motives, and they didn't trust each other. So, he just had to deal with the one who stood out. Meanwhile, a man suddenly stepped forward. He glanced at Yi Xian with an icy cold gaze. Everyone, there are so many of us. Meanwhile, a ray of light flashed. The man's voice stopped abruptly, and then his head flew into the air. It flew for over 10 m before it rolled on the ground. Some of the others couldn't help but take a step back when they witnessed the scene, and their eyes were filled with fear when they gazed at Yi Xian again. All of them were from Darkwave Province, and every single one of them could be said to be ruthless. However, this fellow before them seemed to be even more ruthless. He'd behead them at the slightest provocation. No one stood up and no one spoke. Yi Xian didn't say anything. He gently wiped the blood off the firmament thunder sword, his face expressionless. No one knew what he was thinking. The situation was in a stalemate. At this moment, a man walked out, but he was still very far from Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian and said, "Brother, I have no ill intentions. I just want to say a few words." Yi Xian nodded. "Go ahead." The man spoke in a low voice. "Brother, you're sufficiently strong. Even in the Central Divine Prefecture's younger generation, there are probably very few who can rival you in a one-on-one battle. However, brother, have you thought about it? Most of the people here are disciples of aristocratic families, mercenaries, and some disciples of sects." When he spoke up to here, he paused for a moment and said, "Brother, your actions are undoubtedly cutting off everyone's path to wealth, and you'll offend many powers. As for those people in the Azure Province, they might not be grateful to you." With that, he immediately retreated into the crowd. He was still very afraid of Yi Xian's flying sword. It was an arduous and thankless task. Yi Xian shook his head. If everything had to be done with an objective, then it would be too meaningless. For example, if everyone only thought about their own interests and disregarded the righteousness of the country when the country was facing a calamity, then could such people still be considered human? People could be selfish at many times, but there were also times when they couldn't. "I'm grateful." Suddenly, Lian Wanli walked over to Yi Xian's side, and she gazed at Yi Xian with a smile on her face. "High Scholar Yi, my Grand Cloud Empire will definitely remember this kindness for standing up for Pine Prefecture. It isn't just my Grand Cloud Empire, all of Pine Prefecture will remember this." A middle-aged man suddenly spoke from the crowd. "Why would we fear them if we join forces? We. Lien Wanli suddenly made a grabbing motion from afar. The eyes of the middle-aged man who'd spoken earlier suddenly opened wide while the veins on his neck bulged up. A moment later, his head was separated from his neck, and a bloody head had appeared in Lien Wanli's hand. Everyone in the surroundings was astounded when they witnessed this scene. Yi Xian was also shocked, and he asked, What martial technique is this? Lien Wanli replied indifferently, head lifting technique. She looked at Yi Xian, do you want to learn it? It's very exciting to grab a head. Yi Xian was speechless. Suddenly, someone spoke from the crowd, everyone, if we don't join forces, we'll definitely be defeated one by one. Let's join forces. As soon as the voice resounded, a dozen people charged out from the crowd and went straight for Yi Xian and Lien Wanli. Seeing that someone dared to attack, the others wanted to join as well. Suddenly, 7 flying swords flew out of Yi Xian's sword box. This. Amongst the dozen-plus people that had just charged out, 7 of them were instantly beheaded by the flying swords, whereas the remaining few hurriedly stopped and had terrified expressions on their faces. But at this moment, the surrounding people were ready to attack. Even though Yi Xian was very formidable, they had the advantage in numbers. Meanwhile, Yi Xian walked towards them with his sword in hand. Who else wants to attack? No one dared to attack anymore. Don't be arrogant. Right at this moment, a black-clothed old man suddenly appeared not too far away from Yi Xian. Yi Xian recognized this person. It was that black-clothed old man who followed in Lanxiu all those years ago. However, this black-clothed old man wasn't from the Yin clan. The black-clothed old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, others might be afraid of you, but my Situ clan doesn't take you seriously. Since no one wants to stand out, then allow my Situ clan to do it. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around to look at the hundreds of people behind him. Everyone, my Situ clan will deal with Yi Xian and the others. All of you can just head to Azure Prefecture. Of course, I have a small request, and that is, after entering Azure Prefecture, please take care of State of Jiang and Blue Waves Academy. No one responded to the old man, because they clearly didn't believe the black-clothed old man at this moment. The black-clothed old man was obviously aware of this. He immediately waved his right hand, and 10 old men suddenly appeared behind him. 10,000 law realm experts. The black-clothed old man coldly looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, don't you have a sword immortal behind you? Old man, let me tell you, Kuraki Academy is useless and afraid of the sword immortal behind you, but my Situ clan is not. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said angrily, not afraid of your ancestor. As soon as he finished speaking, he leaped and slashed his sword at the black-clothed old man. At this moment, Yi Xian was undoubtedly very angry. He finally understood why the mysterious woman was so angry. Not to mention the mysterious woman, even he would be angry if someone came to cause trouble for him every few days. The problem was, this mysterious woman wanted to destroy the world. She really wanted to destroy the world, and she even had the ability to do so. That wasn't the main point. The main point was that every time the mysterious woman attacked, the world pagoda within him would become more and more unstable. He didn't want to be played to death by the world pagoda. The black-clothed old man grunted coldly when he saw Yi Xian attack, and then he raised his hand and waved it. A powerful force surged out like a torrent. Bang! This powerful force forcefully pushed Yi Xian over 30 m back. The black-clothed old man didn't continue attacking, and he turned around to glance at the hundreds of others. Everyone, Yi Xian intends to obstruct all of your path to wealth. Don't all of you have any other thoughts? All of them exchanged glances, and the fear in their eyes gradually vanished and was replaced by killing intent. Meanwhile, a black-clothed man suddenly stepped forward. He gazed at Yi Xian and spoke fiercely, everyone, if we're really obstructed by Yi Xian here, then wouldn't we become the laughingstock of the entire sky dimension? A laughingstock? The expressions of all of them grew even colder. Most of them were reputable figures. If Yi Xian really obstructed them here, then they would definitely be too ashamed to return to the Central Divine Prefecture. Meanwhile, the black-clothed man said, everyone, Why don't we join forces and eliminate Yi Xian before we share the wealth of the prefecture? Share the wealth of the prefecture. All of them seemed as if they'd been injected with stimulants when they heard this, and their blood instantly seethed. A cold smile curled up on the corners of the black-clothed old man's mouth when he witnessed this scene, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, this old man thought that you were a great figure just now, but I never imagined that you would actually be so stupid. You actually intend to go against the entire Central Divine Prefecture for the sake of some ants. You're truly foolish to the extreme. When he spoke up to this point, he walked over to stand not too far away from Yi Xian, and the cold smile on the corners of his mouth had transformed into ridicule. Yi Xian, do you know why the world protectors have withdrawn from Pine Prefecture? Because the sects, clans, and world protectors of the Central Divine Prefecture are prepared to sacrifice Azure Prefecture and Azure Wave Prefecture to alleviate the internal strife of the Central Divine Prefecture. Yet you overestimate your ability and actually intend to protect Pine Prefecture. Tell me, aren't you stupid? Stupid? Yi Xian was quite dazed. Indeed, if he didn't care about anything, then he would definitely be able to protect himself. He could head to the Central Divine Prefecture to find his younger sister, and then cultivate properly. His future would be bright. But what about Azure Wave Academy? What about the Jiang Kingdom? What about the Ning Kingdom? If Elder Ji hadn't lent a hand to save him that day, then his younger sister, Yi Ling, would have probably perished a long time ago. If Elder Ji hadn't risked his life to save him in the imperial capital, then he, Mo Yunqi, and Yi Ling would have perished a long time ago. Moreover, Elder Ji had entrusted Azure Wave Academy to him before he died. So, he intended to abandon Azure Wave Academy now that calamity had arrived? Moreover, the Jiang Kingdom's imperial family had helped him a lot. Moreover, Ning Kingdom. Tuoba Fu had asked him to take care of Ning Kingdom as well. And the drunken Immortal restaurant. For him, Yi Xian, the drunken Immortal restaurant had not hesitated to shed all pretense of cordiality with the Dark World and Kuraki Academy. After a moment, Yi Xian suddenly shook his head and smiled. As expected, it's easy for people to bear grudges, but difficult to remember kindness. This is the deep-rooted bad habit of humans. At this point, he faced the swords in his hands. I, Yi Xian, am not saving Azure Prefecture, but myself. As a person, one should never forget one's original intentions, let alone one's roots. As he thought of this, above the prison pagoda, the three swords suddenly trembled, and the entire prison pagoda shook. At the same time, boom! A milky white sword intent suddenly swept out of Yi Xian's body and filled Yi Xian's surroundings. But in next, half of the sword intent gradually turned pitch black. At this moment, half of Yi Xian's sword intent was snow white, and the other half was dark. It was incomparably strange. When he saw this, the black-clothed old man in front of Yi Xian was stunned. In the next moment, his expression changed drastically, and he was slightly exasperated. Not good, his sword heart has broken through, and he might directly advance to the Sword Emperor realm. Kill him, quickly kill him. Chapter 226. The Sword Emperor. What was the Sword Emperor? A sword master was capable of borrowing the force of the wind and the force of the earth. On the other hand, the Sword Emperor was capable of borrowing the force of space and the force of the heavens. Once Yi Xian attained the Sword Emperor realm, it meant that he would be able to borrow the force of the heavens and the earth. In theory, the Sword Emperor realm and the Dharma realm were actually at the same realm. A true Dharma realm expert could utilize space and the energy of space with his own cultivation. The Sword Emperor realm was the same, but the difference was that he had to use his sword as a medium. There was a qualitative gap between the Divine Combination realm and the Dharma realm, and it was the same for Sword Masters and Sword Emperors. Once Yi Xian attained the Sword Emperor realm, it meant that he'd attained the Dharma realm. Yi Xian's current combat strength was already sufficient to kill a Dharma realm expert. Once he attained the Sword Emperor realm, how terrifying would he be with the heaven rank sword in his hand? At this moment, the black-clothed old man was truly slightly terrified. The Dharma realm experts charged at Yixian when they heard the black-clothed old man. It wasn't just them, the surrounding experts from the Central Divine Prefecture attacked as well. The Sword Emperor. There were young sword masters in the Central Divine Prefecture, and they weren't very rare. However, they'd never heard of such a young Sword Emperor. Once Yixian attained the Sword Emperor realm, then who amongst them would be able to resist Yixian? They had to eliminate this obstruction, Yixian. Yixian didn't attack. He just stood there with a calm expression, and his body emanated a black and white sword intent. However, Mo Yunqi's group of 3 were already standing in front of him. Mo Yunqi's face was slightly pale as he gazed at the 10 Dharma realm experts that charged at the front. I'm fucking panicking. Does Bandit you have to gain enlightenment in the middle of a fight? They couldn't defeat them. They knew very well that they weren't a match for 10 Dharma realm experts. But none of them fled. Right at this moment, Lian Wanli suddenly appeared in front of Yixian's group. In her hand was an azure dragon saber. The saber was very long, and it dragged along the ground. As she gazed at the 10 Dharma realm experts that were charging at her, Lian Wanli suddenly strode forward, and then she held the saber in one hand and swiftly slashed it forward. Bang! The leader of the 10,000 Laws realm was sent flying hundreds of feet away by the saber. As soon as he stopped, his body cracked open and blood splattered everywhere. Instant kill? At this moment, everyone was stunned. The few Dharma realm experts who were charging towards Yixian also stopped abruptly at this moment. The 9 of them looked at Lian Wanli in horror, their eyes filled with deep fear. The remaining mercenaries of the divine central continent were filled with terror. Killing a 10,000 Laws realm cultivator in seconds, and with such ease. This was too terrifying. Even Ozwa behind Wanli was stunned, to say nothing of the experts from the Central Divine Prefecture. She knew that her king was very strong, but she never knew how strong Lian Wanli was. This was because Lian Wanli rarely fought, or rather, he rarely fought seriously. Lian Wanli looked at the crowd in front of her and pointed at the old man in black with her left hand. Forgive me for being blunt, but you are all a bunch of trash. If we were to fight one-on-one, which one of you would be able to withstand a strike from this king? The expressions of the old man and the others instantly became unsightly when they heard this. They'd thought that Yixian was the most monstrous genius, but now it would seem like this woman was probably even more monstrous than Yixian. Aren't there a little too many monstrous geniuses in Pine Prefecture? After a short moment, the old man spoke in a low voice. Your king reliance of the Great Cloud Empire, and this old man is from the Situ clan from the upper dimension. My Situ clan's only target is Yixian. If you don't interfere, then my Situ clan will owe you a favor, alright? Lian Wanli shook her head. No. The old man's face turned gloomy when he heard this. Aren't you afraid of causing trouble for the Great Cloud Empire? Lian Wanli turned around and glanced at Yixian. Smiling, he said, Actually, I didn't like this guy at first. He had a glib tongue, and his skin was thicker than the corner of the city wall. Furthermore, he was a bit of a chauvinist. He's petty, vengeful, and shameless. But this chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. Speaking of this, the smile on her face became wider. This time, Pine Prefecture is in trouble, and everyone is in danger. Many clans and sects choose to protect themselves and even take advantage of the chaos to make money. However, he chose to stand up and protect Pine Prefecture. I suddenly realized that if you peel off his outer skin, you'll find that he's actually a good man with iron bones. The old man stared at Lian Wanli. Do you know that you'll become enemies with the Situ clan by helping him? Lian Wanli looked at the old man and said with a smile, Let's become enemies. Who's afraid of who? Then, she pointed at Yixian who was not far away. Now that I'm here, no one can touch a single hair of his. As soon as she finished speaking, the azure dragon saber in her hand suddenly trembled violently, and a dragon's roar reverberated from it. Upon seeing this, the expressions of the old man and the others turned ugly. Are the people of Pine Prefecture not afraid of death? The old man stared fixedly at Lian Wanli. All right, then I'll allow you to witness the strength of my Situ clan. As soon as he finished speaking, a golden talisman suddenly appeared between his fingers. In the next moment, the golden talisman shot into the sky. It's time to call for help. Meanwhile, Uzwa walked over to Lien Wanli's side and said softly, "My king, the Situ clan is a power in the upper worlds of the Central Divine Prefecture. It's a true super-8 clan." Lien Wanli spoke indifferently, "The Realm Defense Alliance is here, so I'll fight to the end." Uzwa glanced at Lien Wanli but didn't say anything. Meanwhile, little Tuoba suddenly walked over to Lien Wanli's side and said softly, "Big sister Lien, have you fallen for little Yi?" Lien Wanli blinked, and then he shook his head repeatedly. "Oh no. How could I fall for someone with such thick skin? It's too thick. It's thicker than the walls of my home." Little Tuoba asked another question. "Then do you hate him?" Lien Wanli thought for a moment and said, "He has thick skin." Little Tuoba couldn't wrap her head around that answer. What sort of answer is that? Little Tuoba refused to give up, and she wanted to ask something else. Meanwhile, Lien Wanli leaned over and whispered in her ear, "Even if a woman likes someone, she can't say it out loud. She has to be reserved. Otherwise, if a man thinks that you like him, then he'll be fearless and not take you seriously. Understand?" Little Tuoba blinked and seemed to be lost in thought. Lien Wanli turned around to glance at Yi Xian, and she recalled the scenes that had occurred in the imperial palace of the Great Cloud Empire. Her ears suddenly felt slightly hot, and her face flushed slightly red. In the next moment, she suddenly turned around and slashed with her saber. Bang! Over 30 m away, a few people were instantly slashed into two by the Azure Dragon saber. Everyone here was stunned. Has she gone mad? The black-clothed old man was quite stunned as well. Why did she suddenly attack? Lien Wanli gestured with her right hand, and the Azure Dragon saber flew back into her grasp. She glanced coldly at the corpses that she'd sliced up and said, "They're too ugly and truly an eyesore." The others were speechless. The black-clothed old man glanced at Lien Wanli. At this moment, besides fear, there was also a trace of fear in his eyes. Because he noticed that the woman before him was actually at the true Dharma realm. The true Dharma realm. He was naturally aware of the difference between the pseudo-Dharma realm and the true Dharma realm, but how old was the woman before him? Everyone in the world said that the most monstrous genius in Pine Prefecture was Yi Xian. Actually, the most monstrous genius in Pine Prefecture was this woman before him. The black-clothed old man took a deep and long glance at Lien Wanli, and then he turned to look at Yi Xian who stood nearby. Yi Xian had to die no matter what. And Lanxiu, the bloodline of the martial god. The Situ clan had to obtain this woman. The Situ clan couldn't allow any mistakes in this regard. So, even if they knew that the person behind Yi Xian might not be simple, the Situ clan still chose to eliminate him. The more monstrous Yi Xian was, the more worried the Situ clan was. Because the Situ clan was afraid that he would obtain the clan's acknowledgement. That was why he'd come here personally this time. Not far away, Yi Xian was standing quietly. Comprehension? It wasn't so much comprehension as introspection. This chapter isn't over. Please continue to the next page. So, no one in the mortal world dared to say that their Dao heart had always been the same. Even Yi Xian had been lost and even taken the wrong path. The stronger a person was, the more likely it was that he would lose his nature and forget his original intentions. It was easy to hold a grudge, but difficult to remember a favor. It was easy to become bad, but difficult to become good. The greatest enemy in a person's life is not others, but oneself. When he thought up to here, the two strands of sword intent on Yi Xian's body suddenly vanished. The gazes of everyone here shot towards Yi Xian. The black-clothed old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian while he clenched his fists tightly. At this moment, his heart was in his throat. Once Yi Xian attained the Sword Emperor realm, then it was very likely that the clan would acknowledge Yi Xian. Such a young Sword Emperor would have a limitless future. Even ancient clans and extraordinary powers like the clan and Situ clan didn't dare underestimate such a monstrous genius. Most importantly, and Lanxiu seemed to be interested in Yi Xian as well. Under such circumstances, the Situ clan's hopes had undoubtedly become even slimmer. Killing intent appeared in the black-clothed old man's eyes when he thought up to hear. Right at this moment he suddenly raised his head. An invisible pressure suddenly smashed down from the sky, and many people retreated explosively. Under everyone's gaze, two old men walked out from a space. The law control realm. The black-clothed old man's expression instantly eased up when he saw them. They're finally here. They're the two revered elders of the Situ clan. The black-clothed old man walked over to them and bowed slightly, and then he pointed at Yixian and Wanli. Both of them gazed at Yixian, and then one of them slapped his palm towards Yixian from afar as soon as he saw Yixian. As soon as Yixian threw his palm out, the space where he was instantly distorted. Meanwhile, Wanli suddenly appeared in front of Yixian, and the saber in her hand slashed down swiftly. The sound of space being torn apart resounded. In an instant, the space where Yixian resided returned to normal. The gaze of the old man descended onto Wanli, the law realm. Wanli remained silent. The old man was just about to attack when Yixian, who stood behind Wanli, suddenly raised his head to look at the old man. There's no enmity between me and the Situ clan, nor do I want to become enmity with it. Is the Situ clan bent on killing me? The old man looked at Yixian. It's okay if we don't start a feud. If you castrate yourself with a knife and swear that you'll never see Missin again and cut off all ties between you and Missin, the Situ family will let you and the people around you go. What do you say? The old man smirked. Of course, if you're unwilling, you can call the sword celestial behind you out. Don't worry, my Situ clan will not bully you with numbers. Old man, fight her one-on-one. Yixian shook his head and was about to speak when a woman in a plain dress suddenly appeared in front of the old man. She raised her head to look into the depths of the starry sky and frowned. What kind of trash is this? How dare you peep at me? Scram. In the distant starry sky, an aura suddenly receded like a tide, and it completely disappeared into the depths of the starry sky. At this moment, the old man in front of the woman in a plain dress suddenly said, "You're that sword celestial? Old man, I will fight you one-on-one. Let this old man have a taste of your strength." The woman in a plain dress retracted her gaze and looked at the old man. She just stared at the old man. Yixian was stunned, and his face instantly turned pale. He lamented in his heart, "It's over. This world is hopeless." P.S. I went to talk to him again today, and I recommended him to read The Only Sword. I told him that in order to read this book, I stayed up all night, and I didn't even go to work. He went to read it and he said it was barely okay. I was delighted, and in the end, I asked him to download Zongheng, but he said that Zongheng would charge for it, and he wanted to read the pirated version. At noon, I went to get lunch for my dad, and he asked me to bring him a bowl of noodles. I swear to God, too much salt has nothing to do with me. I said it was the boss's fault. He kept scolding the boss. I'm grateful to all my friends who read the original version. End of this chapter. Chapter 227. The plain-dressed woman stood in the air. Her hair reached her waist and she wore a plain dress that was spotless. Her right hand was behind her back, and between her fingers, a black and a white object was gently twirling. She just stood in the air without any fluctuation of aura. At that moment, Yixian was full of doubts because the mysterious woman had said that he had to walk his own path in the future. She would not come out to help him anymore. But now she had come out. That was not the most important question. The most important question was whether she would continue to destroy the world. Wanli's expression also became serious. He had seen the terror of the mysterious woman in Kuraki Academy. She was no longer a human. She was more powerful than a god. Wanli's eyes were filled with respect and yearning. A woman should be strong, just like the person in front of him. One wrong thought and she could destroy the world. Mo Yunqi and the others were excited at that moment because they had seen the plain-dressed woman fight before. She was so strong that she had no friends. Of course, if they knew that the plain-dressed woman had almost destroyed the world with a single sword strike, they would not be so excited. In the air, the moment the plain-dressed woman appeared, the expression of the old man in front of her instantly became serious. because he did not see how the plain-dressed woman had appeared. Not simple. That was what the old man was thinking at the moment, and he completely stopped underestimating Lin Fan. The old man floated backward and retreated 100 meters. When he stopped, a black chain suddenly appeared in his hand. At the end of the chain was a giant black anchor. The old man stared fixedly at the woman in the plain dress. Profound qi gushed out of his body in an unending stream. This profound qi madly flowed into the iron chain in his hand. In an instant, a formless pressure surged out of his body like a tidal wave. Below, countless people retreated rapidly. A powerhouse at the spell-controlling realm could be said to be truly capable of destroying the world. Not far away, the plain-dressed woman did not even look at the old man. She raised her head and her gaze pierced through the layers of space and reached the depths of the starry sky. She did not know what she saw, but she frowned slightly. At the same time, she slowly clenched her right hand. Meanwhile, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from the old man who stood in front of the woman in a plain dress, and then the black anchor in the old man's hand suddenly trembled violently. Strands of energy that could obliterate the world surged out incessantly from it, and the entire ground cracked inch by inch. Countless people below were horrified, and they retreated explosively once more. The old man stared at the woman in the plain dress with a sinister expression. "Swordsman, why aren't you taking out your sword? Sword immortal." He was naturally not afraid of sword immortals because there were also sword immortals among the Situ family's consecrators. He often sparred with sword immortals and won more than he lost. One should know that he was no ordinary imperial law realm, but a half-step imperial law realm. Hearing the old man's words, the woman in the plain dress suddenly retracted her gaze. She looked at the old man in front of her. The old man gripped the black chain tightly in his right hand and roared, "Why aren't you drawing your sword? Are you looking down on the old man?" The woman in the plain dress had an indifferent expression as she quietly looked at the old man. The old man was instantly infuriated when he saw the woman's gaze. This was disdain. No, this was disregard. The old man's expression was ferocious. "Woman, you'll pay the price for looking down on me." As his voice fell, he suddenly smashed the iron chain in his hand towards the woman in the plain dress. The iron chain trembled as it flew out, and the huge black anchor flew out. If this chapter is not over, please continue to the next page. It was earth-shattering. Everywhere it passed, the air was instantly shattered. Even the space trembled. This might, this power, already possessed the might of heaven and earth. However, the woman in the plain dress still did not move. The power that the old man emitted instantly disappeared when it arrived in front of the woman in the plain dress. When the huge black anchor broke through the air and arrived in front of her, she narrowed her eyes slightly. In her eyes, a sword light flashed, the huge black anchor directly cracked, and in the next moment, a ray of sword light pierced through the old man's forehead. The old man's body stiffened. Everyone was dumbfounded. Blood kept flowing out of the old man's forehead. He looked at the mysterious woman in front of him in a daze. "You're not a sword immortal. You're a great sword immortal. Great sword immortal." Although there was only one more word than sword immortal, there was a world of difference. Great sword immortal was equivalent to a true imperial law realm. This kind of expert could be said to be at the top of the firmament world. After hearing the old man's words, countless people were instantly stunned. Great sword immortal? After all, there were probably no more than 5 great sword immortals in the entire firmament world. At the very least, there were no more than 5 that were known. Yet now, there was one. The woman glanced at the old man, and her face was still emotionless and indifferent. On the other side, the eyes of the black-clothed old man and the other old man at the true imperial law realm were filled with fear. The Situ clan had a great sword immortal, but they didn't have a great sword immortal. Even a renowned clan like the Situ clan would absolutely not dare to underestimate an expert at such a level. Meanwhile, Yi Xian arrived behind the woman in a plain dress. He was about to speak when the woman suddenly shook her head. "Your world is probably finished." Yi Xian was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, Say Senior, don't think. Even though there are many bad people in this world, there are many good people as well. The myriad of living beings in this world are very innocent as well. Don't do anything rash. At this moment, he really was slightly panicking. This world had his friends and brothers, and his friends and brothers had their own clans. If the mysterious woman before him destroyed this world with a single strike of her sword, everyone would be finished. Sometimes, Yi Xian would like to kill a lot of people, such as the hundreds of people in front of him. He would like to kill all of them. However, he really could not kill all the people in the world. The woman turned around and glanced at Yi Xian. Do anything rash? You're afraid that I'll destroy this world with another strike? Yi Xian smiled embarrassedly. Senior, you're so kind. I don't think you'll do that, the woman in a plain dress said indifferently. What if I insist on destroying this world with a single strike? Are you going to stop me? Yi Xian shook his head. Firstly, I'm indebted to you. I'm not someone who returns kindness with enmity. Secondly, if it wasn't for you, I would have died many times over. Stop you? I'm not qualified and I don't have the strength. However, if I had the strength, I would definitely stop you, Senior. The woman in a plain dress looked at him for a long time. In the end, she nodded slightly and her expression softened slightly. A swordsman should stand tall and have a backbone. Even if you're facing someone 10,000 times stronger than you can't lose your beliefs and principles. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression relaxed slightly. It seemed that this world wouldn't be destroyed for the time being. Sue, this chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page. The woman in a plain dress suddenly said, Do you really think that sword strike of mine at Kuraki Academy was going to destroy this world? Yi Xian frowned. Senior, did you have other intentions with that sword strike? The woman in a plain dress raised her head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. After a while, she said softly, I once told you that someone is spying on your world from the depths of the starry sky. That person's aura has already permeated this world and he has laid down an invisible formation. That sword strike of mine directly damaged the formation. However, I didn't dare to use my full strength. If I did, forget this world, even your universe would be destroyed. Yi Xian, the woman in a plain dress retracted her gaze and looked at Yi Xian. The reason why I came out this time is because that person is actually looking for me. And then? Yi Xian subconsciously asked. The woman in a plain dress said calmly, I glanced at him once and he scrammed. Yi Xian, the woman in a plain dress once again looked into the depths of the starry sky. After a while, she retracted her gaze and looked at Yi Xian. When a person's strength reaches a certain level, they no longer have any so-called humanity. In their eyes, there's only the great Tao and only immortality. Everything else is like an ant. In my eyes, apart from one person, everything else is also like an ant. Do you understand? Yi Xian nodded. Senior, don't worry. I won't overly rely on you. The woman in a plain dress nodded. You've obtained the recognition of this pagoda. It's an opportunity. This pagoda is not an ordinary object. If it has 9 Tao laws, even I wouldn't dare to underestimate its power. However, you must remember that this thing is also a dangerous thing. Apart from those imprisoned in the pagoda, there are many experts pursuing this thing. Once they find out that this pagoda is with you, with my current situation, it'll be difficult for me to protect you. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. The woman in a plain dress suddenly pointed at the Situ family's Dharma controlling realm expert not far away. Kill him. Yi Xian was stunned. The woman in a plain dress said, If you can't kill him, I'll forcefully separate you from this pagoda and kill all your enemies in this world. I'll let you enjoy a lifetime of glory in this world. As for me, I'll leave with this pagoda and we'll never be able to meet again. If you kill him, this pagoda will be left to you. However, I'll still leave and you'll have to face everything after that. Yi Xian said in a low voice. Why? Senior, I really don't understand. The woman in a plain dress said indifferently, If you want to cultivate and walk to the peak of the world, then you'll have to walk all the paths by yourself. The path of cultivation can only be walked by yourself. Yi Xian was silent. He understood what the woman in a plain dress meant. The woman in a plain dress meant very simple. If he chose the first option, then he wouldn't have any trouble. Not only would there be no trouble, but he would also reach the peak of this world in an instant. However, if he chose the second option, it meant that he would have to rely on himself to fight, to struggle, to work hard. One was a shortcut. The other was countless detours. Yi Xian was silent for a long time. In the end, he faced the Dharma-controlling realm expert not far away. I choose the second option. As soon as he said that, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from his body. Sword sovereign. Next to Yi Xian, the woman in a plain dress had a hint of gratification in her eyes. She said softly, "The way of the sword is like life, there's no shortcut. If you choose the first option, the feelings of the past will naturally return to dust, dust to dust. Since you choose the second option, then we'll meet again in the clouds." As she spoke, she lowered her head and glanced at her right hand. At that moment, her right hand had already begun to gradually become illusory. This wisp of clone should also disappear. End of this chapter. Chapter 228. People could only rely on themselves. That was what Yi Xian thought. If the mysterious woman did everything for him, then what was the point of his life? Yi Xian walked towards the Dharma Defensive Realm elder not far away. Dharma Defensive Realm. He had once fought with the Left Academy emissary of Kuraki College. That time, the other party suppressed his realm and he was still defeated. Of course, the current him could not be compared to him back then. Battle Dharma Defensive Realm. Yi Xian gripped the spirit elegant sword tightly in his hand. It would be a lie to say that he did not feel pressured when facing such an expert. However, no matter how pressured he was, he had to fight. Seeing Yi Xian walk over, the Dharma Defensive Realm elder slowly clenched his right hand. He had no confidence in fighting the mysterious woman, but he was confident in fighting Yi Xian. Even though Yi Xian had become the Sword Emperor, he was still confident. Yi Xian walked to a few dozen feet in front of the elder and pointed the spirit elegant sword at him. "Don't waste time, let's decide life and death with one sword." His voice fell. Boom. A monstrous sword aura suddenly vibrated from the spirit elegant sword in his hand, and the powerful sword aura surged in all directions like waves. Heaven and Earth Sword Aura. The current him could already gather heaven and earth and space aura with his sword. Although he had not reached the Dharma realm, the aura of this sword had already reached the Dharma realm. Without wasting any time, Yi Xian charged at the old man with his sword in hand. There was only determination in Yi Xian's heart. Either you die or I die. Sensing the power in Yi Xian's sword, the elder's expression instantly turned serious. At this moment, he realized that he had greatly underestimated Yi Xian. Not daring to think too much, the elder leaped and opened and pulled with both hands. The space in front of him suddenly distorted, and along with it, Yi Xian's sword. Realm suppression. At this moment, the spirit elegant sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly turned dark. Evil sword aura. The moment the evil thought's sword intent appeared, the distorted space instantly became illusory. Sensing this, the elder's expression changed, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. How is this possible? How can you shake space? At this moment, Yi Xian's sword pierced through the old man's forehead and arrived a few inches away, but the sword could no longer pierce through. This was because the old man's two hands were tightly gripping the blade of the exquisite spirit sword. But in the next moment, a sword suddenly slashed out from the sword case on Yi Xian's back. At the same time, Yi Xian held his sword with both hands and spun it forward. A tearing sound resounded as the old man retreated 300 m, but one of his arms had been chopped off completely by Yi Xian's sword strike. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings changed drastically when they witnessed this scene. Yi Xian could actually defeat someone in the Dharma defensive realm? Not to mention the spectators, even Yi Xian was slightly stunned at this moment. I can actually defeat someone in the Dharma defensive realm? As if she knew what Yi Xian was thinking, the woman suddenly spoke indifferently, "There are many things that you'll never know how outstanding you are if you don't do them." Outstanding? The old man with one arm suddenly spoke fiercely, "Let me see how outstanding you and your disciple are." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly opened his palm, and a golden talisman shot into the sky. "He's calling for help. He's calling for help again." Yi Xian fell silent, but flames of rage were burning in his heart. Since the Azure Prefecture until now, he'd gone through Kuraki Academy and the Dark World, then the Joyful Union Sect and the Laughing Sect, and now the Sidhu clan. These powers and people had wanted him dead more than once. There was no end to it. Meanwhile, the woman suddenly walked over to Yi Xian's side. "You're only fighting others now, fighting yourself. One day you'll fight the heavens, fight fate, and fight reincarnation." Yi Xian laughed bitterly. "Living like that is so tiring." This chapter isn't finished. Please continue to the next page. The woman turned around to look at Yi Xian. "Then you choose the first option, and I'll deal with all the enemies in this world for you." Yi Xian shook his head. "But?" asked the woman. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, "I hope to be able to see you one day, and I hope I'm strong enough at that time." The woman gazed at Yi Xian for a long time. In the end, a wisp of a smile arose on the corners of her mouth, and this smile was sufficient to make everything in the world pale in comparison. Unfortunately, Yi Xian was still unable to see her face. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "I've always been unaware of your name, Senior." The woman shook her head. "Others have given me some nicknames, but I don't like any of them. Moreover, only a single person in this world can call me by my real name. If you're able to leave this world in the future, then you'll know my name when we meet again." Yi Xian nodded. "I'll work hard." The woman suddenly took a step forward. At this moment, she was extremely close to Yi Xian, and she placed her right hand lightly on Yi Xian's face while a trace of an indescribable expression appeared in her eyes. "I really envy your younger sister." "Envy Linga?" Yi Xian was stunned, and he was just about to speak when a formidable aura suddenly assaulted them from the sky. "Someone's here." Yi Xian raised his head and looked over. An expanse of space had suddenly been torn apart, and then a middle-aged man walked out from within that space. The middle-aged man wore a robe embroidered with dragons, had long hair that hung loosely on his shoulders, and had a domineering aura that emanated a dignified aura. It was the current patriarch of the Sidhu clan, Sidhu Huang. All the experts of the Sidhu clan hurriedly bowed when they saw Sidhu Huang. "Patriarch." Sidhu Huang nodded slightly, and then he gazed at the woman in a simple dress who stood not too far away. His brows instantly knit together when he saw her, because he was actually unable to discern her strength. At this moment, Sidhu Huang's expression gradually became slightly solemn. He'd originally intended to attack, but he'd temporarily discarded that thought. Sidhu Huang gazed at the woman and spoke in a low voice. "I know a little about all the famous sword immortals in the sky dimension, but I've never met you. Could it be that you're not from the sky dimension?" Right at this moment, Sidhu Huang's expression changed drastically because the woman in a simple dress had suddenly appeared in front of him. At the same time, an ethereal sword of energy had arrived at the center of his forehead. Everyone here was stunned when they witnessed this scene. Even Sidhu Huang's eyes were filled with disbelief, because he hadn't even seen when the woman in a simple dress had attacked. She wasn't a sword immortal at all, nor was she a great sword immortal. She was an existence that surpassed sword immortals. In an instant, Sidhu Huang's face turned ghastly pale. He knew that the Sidhu clan had caused trouble this time. At this moment, he'd cursed Kuraki Academy and the World Protector's entire family in his heart. Kuraki Academy and the World Protector had concealed the truth. Even though he was extremely shocked, Sidhu Huang quickly calmed down, and he gazed at the woman in a simple dress. "My Sidhu clan has offended you. My Sidhu clan." Meanwhile, the woman in a simple dress raised her sword and stabbed it forward. The sword instantly pierced through the center of Sidhu Huang's forehead. All the experts of the Sidhu clan were dumbstruck. It was especially so for the black-clothed old man. At this moment, his entire body couldn't help but tremble. Meanwhile, the woman gazed at Yi Xian who stood nearby. "Even though the pagoda within you is being suppressed by those 3 swords, countless years have passed, and the strength of those existences within the pagoda is ceaselessly recovering. Coupled with the fact that the owners of the other two swords and my main body are quite far away from this dimension, it's difficult for me to take care of them. Therefore, some existences within the pagoda are gradually awakening. Coupled with the fact that I've attacked too many times, the pagoda can't bear the burden, and the pagoda's seal can collapse at any time. As she spoke, she slowly walked in front of Yi Xian. I'll turn this clone into a wisp of sword qi to suppress this pagoda. However, it won't take long, at most a year. Within a year, you must find the Tao law as soon as possible and obtain the true inheritance of this pagoda. Otherwise, you'll definitely die. Clone. Yi Xian's mind went blank. The mysterious woman in front of him was actually just a clone. If a clone was already so powerful, then what about her main body? This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. The woman in a simple dress suddenly held Yi Xian's cheeks with both hands, and her voice was soft. Remember, no one can help you forever. I'll wait for you above the clouds. As her voice fell, she gradually became illusory. Yi Xian was stunned, and he hurriedly tried to grab the woman in a simple dress. However, he grabbed nothing, because the woman in a simple dress had already become completely illusory. Just like that, the woman in a simple dress became more and more illusory. Yi Xian said softly, "Did I harm you?" The woman in a simple dress smiled and said, "It's just a clone. This clone's task is to come to this world to find you. Since I've found you, there's no point in me existing. The reason why I've stayed in the pagoda for so long is because I want to spend more time with you. Unfortunately, this pagoda isn't stable and I must suppress it. Otherwise, this pagoda will collapse, and with the power of this clone, it'll be difficult to protect you. Remember, you must find me. Because my main body is too far away from this world, I can't contact her, and I don't dare to contact her forcefully, for fear of breaking the pagoda's seal. So, my main body doesn't know that I've found you, and she might still be looking for you in the endless starry sky." As she said that, she raised her head and looked into the starry sky. She said softly, "I've already contacted the clone closest to this world. If she receives my message, she'll definitely rush over immediately. I hope she can make it in time." As she spoke, the woman in a simple dress completely disappeared, and a ray of sword light quietly appeared in the sky above the prison pagoda in Yi Xian's body. This ray of sword light directly entered the rightmost sword. In an instant, that sword violently trembled, and the entire prison pagoda was directly enveloped by a ray of sword light. At this moment, a hysterical roar suddenly rang out from within the pagoda. "Damned woman, damned, damned. If I leave this pagoda, I'll definitely tear you and the pagoda master into 1,000 pieces, grind your bones into dust, and nail your souls to the God-punishing pillar to burn for eternity." In the sky above the prison pagoda, the rightmost sword suddenly sank slightly. Boom! The entire prison pagoda shook again, and the voice within the pagoda became weaker and weaker. After a while, it completely disappeared. However, outside the prison pagoda, Yi Xian seemed to have suffered a heavy blow, and his entire body slowly fell from the sky. At this moment, the sky in the distance suddenly split open, and within that split space stood a middle-aged man. Supremacy Lu of the Realm Defense Alliance. At this moment, Supremacy Lu was staring at the place where the woman in a simple dress had stood. His heart relaxed. "She's finally disappeared." As he said that, he suddenly looked at the falling Yi Xian. He originally wanted to attack, but as if he had thought of something, a hint of fear flashed in his eyes, and so he stopped. A moment later, Supremacy Lu turned his head and said coldly, "Send out the Firmament World's bounty. Yi Xian has violated the rules of the Firmament World, and everyone in the Firmament World has the right to kill him. Anyone who kills him will receive a heaven-grade treasure, a heaven-grade martial skill, a heaven-grade cultivation method, and 100 million supreme-grade spirit stones. 5 supreme-grade spirit veins." As he said that, he looked at Situ Huang's corpse, then quickly said, "However, no one from the Realm Defense Alliance is allowed to attack him." Not long later, Yi Xian's name spread throughout the entire Firmament World. This was because on the Firmament World's bounty list, Yi Xian was ranked second, and his strength was the weakest in the entire Firmament World's bounty list. Divine Unity Realm. Even if he was ranked 10th, he was still at the 10,000 Dharma realm. Moreover, he was a Saber Emperor. P.S. Today there are 2 updates. I know I am guilty, so I have decided to use a different method to make it up to everyone. Explode. I want to explode. How is it? Excited? 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 As long as everyone follows my WeChat account, directly search for my WeChat account, Green Phoenix Peak, click follow, and you will be able to see my exploding photos today. In the past, many people have always questioned my looks. But when you see my photos, you will realize that you know nothing about my handsomeness. Follow WeChat account, Green Phoenix Peak. Shine your eyes, light up a different life for you. Serious warning, sister, be careful. If you see the green phoenix, how can I rest easy? End of this chapter. Chapter 229. In the air, Supreme Lord Lu stared at the descending Yi Xian. There were many times when he wanted to kill this disaster himself. There were 2 reasons why he wanted to kill Yi Xian. The first was because of the plain-dressed woman. In the Firmament World, the Realm Defense Alliance did not allow anyone to challenge its authority, but the plain-dressed woman had killed several people from the Realm Defense Alliance. This was undoubtedly a great humiliation for the Realm Defense Alliance. Although they had sealed off the news, there was no such thing as an airtight wall in the world. Some of the super factions of the Divine Central Continent had already learned of this matter, which had a great impact on the Realm Defense Alliance's prestige. Before this, no faction in the Firmament World had dared to recklessly attack the Realm Defense Alliance. Even some of the super clans, such as the Yin family, did not dare to rashly make an enemy of the Realm Defense Alliance. But now, several people from the Realm Defense Alliance had been killed, but the Realm Defense Alliance had not retaliated. This made the Realm Defense Alliance no longer so sacred and inviolable in the hearts of some of the super factions and sects. Just like now, many factions in the Divine Central Continent had begun to pay lip service to the Realm Defense Alliance. And all of this was because of the plain-dressed woman and Yi Xian. They naturally did not dare to touch the plain-dressed woman. But they were not afraid of Yi Xian at all. Especially now that the plain-dressed woman had left. The second reason, and also the most important one, was that Yi Xian was too monstrous. Moreover, Yi Xian wanted to protect Azure Prefecture, so they had no choice but to get rid of Yi Xian. Because they had withdrawn from Azure Prefecture, they wanted to abandon Azure Prefecture and Azure Wave Prefecture, weaken the spirit energy of the 2 prefectures, and obtain their source energy to protect the Divine Central Continent. Only by devouring the source energy of Azure Prefecture and Azure Wave Prefecture could the Divine Central Continent slowly recover, but Yi Xian wanted to protect Azure Prefecture. Although he wanted to personally take action, he did not dare to. Because he knew that a strong cultivator like the plain-clothed woman couldn't really die. And now, with the strength of the Azure Firmament World's realm-protecting alliance, they couldn't do anything to her. Luckily, the plain-clothed woman had already left. Even so, he did not dare to take the risk. The only way was to get someone else to do the dirty work. To get someone else to target Yi Xian. There were plenty of experts in the Middle Earth region. Below, Yi Xian was slowly falling. Lian Wanli suddenly flew up and caught Yi Xian before landing on the ground. At this moment, Yi Xian's face was incomparably pale and his body was twitching as if he was suffering from some great pain. The nearby experts of the Central Divine Prefecture instantly became restless when they witnessed this scene. Lian Wanli took out a purple pill and fed it to Yi Xian, but he didn't get better. She frowned slightly. After killing Yi Xian, there will be a heaven-ranked cultivation technique, heaven-ranked martial technique, heaven-ranked treasure, and 100 million supreme grade spirit stones. At this moment, someone in the crowd not far away suddenly roared. Following that, a beam of red light shot up into the sky. A huge light screen appeared in the sky. On the light screen, there were 10 blood-red names from top to bottom. And the second person happened to be Yi Xian. Tsang World's wanted list. This was the Tsang World's wanted list. It had been created by the Realm Protector to hunt down and kill those who violated the rules of the Tsang world. It could be said that once one was on this list, it meant that the entire Tsang world could no longer tolerate him. Now that Yi Xian was on this list, it meant that Yi Xian had definitely committed a crime. And now, killing Yi Xian was justice, and it was to get rid of evil. The wanted list. Lian Wanli raised her head and glanced at the sky. She slowly clenched her fists, and there was a trace of seriousness in her eyes. Big trouble. Yi Xian's consciousness was actually slightly clear at this moment, but he still couldn't control his brain and body because the backlash was too painful. He knew that the woman in the plain dress had left without getting rid of the Realm Protector Alliance. He would be in big trouble. But there was nothing he could do about it, because this was his choice. He had chosen to walk his own path in the future. No matter what he encountered, he had to face it by himself. Actually, he really wanted to make a new choice. Yi Xian bit the tip of his tongue to prevent himself from falling asleep. In his current situation, if he fell asleep, he would probably never wake up again. The experts from the Divine Central Continent instantly grew bolder when they saw the woman in the plain dress leave. The wealth of Azure Prefecture was truly too tempting, and they were truly unwilling to leave now. Avenge the Patriarch. At this moment, a 10,000 Dharma realm powerhouse from the Situ clan not far away suddenly roared. In the next moment he directly charged towards Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Lian Wanli held the Azure Dragon Saber in her hand and slashed forward, and a strand of saber energy tore through the sky. Bang! The Dharma realm expert was instantly pushed almost 300 m back. Everyone looked at Lian Wanli. Lian Wanli glanced coldly at the hundreds of people in front of her. Let me see who dares. Everyone, let's attack together. Meanwhile, a Dharma realm expert spoke abruptly. Kill them, get the bounty, and obtain the treasures of Azure Prefecture, and we won't have to worry about cultivation resources for the rest of our lives. The hundreds of people were ready to move. They gazed at Yi Xian and Lian Wanli with killing intent and fanaticism in their eyes. Killing these two stumbling blocks would allow them to obtain wealth that they couldn't use in a lifetime. The armored woman by Lian Wanli's side hurriedly said, "My king, the Realm Defense Alliance is targeting Yi Xian, and he's dead for sure. My king, please avoid them for now." Lian Wanli looked at the armored woman and spoke coldly, "You mean we should ignore him?" The armored woman spoke in a low voice. "The Realm Defense Alliance isn't targeting the Great Cloud Empire. If my king insists on protecting him, then I'm afraid it will implicate the Great Cloud Empire and you." Lian Wanli glanced coldly at the armored woman. "I know you're thinking for my sake, but if I ignore him now, then he'll die for sure." The armored woman still wanted to say something, but Lian Wanli waved his hand. "It's this king who invited him to form an alliance with us to resist the cultivators of the Divine Central Continent. If I abandon him for the sake of self-preservation, then even I will look down on myself." As she spoke, she looked coldly at the nearby experts of the Divine Central Continent. "No one can touch him before I die." Seeing that Lian Wanli had made up his mind, the armored woman said nothing more. It was fine to admonish him, but if he went too far, then that was not the way of a minister. Upon hearing Lian Wanli's words, the expressions of the Situ clan's 10,000 Dharma realm powerhouses instantly turned ferocious. Among them, the black-clothed old man suddenly stood out. "Everyone, if we join forces, wouldn't it be easy to kill her and Yi Xian? If anyone dares to act fearfully at this moment, then what glory, splendor, and wealth do we have? Let's attack together." As soon as he finished speaking, he and the 7 Dharma realm experts beside him charged at Yi Xian and Lian Wanli. Behind them were hundreds of experts of the Divine Central Continent who were on the verge of madness. If such a formation worked together, even a true defensive Dharma realm cultivator could be easily killed. Mo Yunqi and the other two walked in front of Yi Xian. Looking at the crowd charging at them, the three of them were expressionless, as though they were facing death with equanimity. Little Demon Tuoba also stepped forward. She clenched her left fist and gripped the small hammer tightly in her right hand. She was not afraid, but rather excited. She had never fought in such a big group fight before. As for whether she could win or not, she had never thought about it, At this time, Lien Wanli suddenly looked at them. The few of you, return to Great Cloud territory immediately and gather the Blue Billow Dao soldiers, Black Flame soldiers and King's Imperial Guards of Great Cloud Empire. Don't let them enter Azure Province. Iswa was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, My king, there isn't enough time. Lien Wanli said calmly, This king will buy you some time. The voice faded. In the next moment, she held Yi Xian in her arms as she turned around and flashed towards the boundless mountain range in the distance. When he saw Lien Wanli flee with Yi Xian in his arms, the black-clothed old man at the front was stunned, and then he glanced at Mo Yunqi and the others with killing intent in his eyes. An old man by his side suddenly said, That fellow Yi Xian is heavily injured. Kill Yi Xian and that woman first, otherwise, there'll be no end to the troubles in the future. The black-clothed old man suddenly returned to his senses when he heard this. If Yi Xian recovers, then it would be difficult to kill him. In next to no time, a few hundred experts of the Situ clan led them in pursuit of Lien Wanli and Yi Xian. Mo Yunqi and Bai Zhe were about to pursue them when Iswa stopped them. With your strength, you'll only be a burden if you go over. Listen to my king. Immediately return and gather the forces here. Don't allow them to enter the hinterlands of Azure Province. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and transformed into a shadow that vanished on the spot. Mo Yunqi turned around and glanced at the direction Yi Xian and Lien Wanli had vanished towards, and there was a trace of worry in his eyes. Bai Zhe spoke in a low voice, Listen to Miss Lien. Mo Yunqi nodded, All right. As soon as he finished speaking, he gazed at Jianji. Jianji didn't speak, and his figure just flashed towards the cloud vessel in the distance. Mo Yunqi and Bai Zhe were stunned, and then they hurriedly followed after him. But it wasn't long before Mo Yunqi suddenly stopped, and then he turned around to gaze at Taba who stood on the spot without moving. Little demon, what about you? Taba shook his head, All of you return. I'm returning to the Central Divine Prefecture. Mo Yunqi didn't say anything when he heard this, and he just turned around and dashed towards the cloud vessel with Bai Zhe. Taba glanced at the mountain range in the distance, and numerous explosions resounded incessantly from there. A short while later, Taba withdrew his gaze, and then he ran swiftly towards the distant Pine State path while he muttered, Little Yi, hold on. I'll go get my father, my uncle, and my big brother to help. But I'll lose face if I go back now. I don't want to go back. As she spoke, she actually started crying, and she cried as she ran. The Central Divine Prefecture. The news of Yi Xian's appearance on the Firmament World's wanted list had swiftly spread throughout the entire Central Divine Prefecture. His cultivation was so low, yet the rewards were so high. Many people weren't just curious about Yi Xian, they were extremely tempted. Some people from the Central Divine Prefecture had already made a move and were rushing towards Pine State. On a certain mountain, a woman was chasing something with a group of people, and she was eating a flatbread as she ran. That woman was Lu Banzwang. Suddenly, a ray of light shot into the sky above Lu Banzwang and the others, and it didn't take long for a row of blood-red names to appear in the sky. When he saw the second name on the list, Lu Banzwang was instantly stunned. Beside Lu Banzwang was her brother, Lu Kuang. When he saw Yi Xian's name, his expression instantly darkened, and he looked at Lu Banzwang. Don't do anything stupid. Lu Banzwang withdrew his gaze and turned to leave. Lu Kuang's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly stopped Lu Banzwang. Girl, don't go crazy. That's the Firmament World's wanted list. If you help him, you'll become the enemy of the entire Firmament World. Do you want to destroy our Lu family? Lu Banzwang was silent for a moment, and then she said, From now on, I'm no longer a member of the Lu family. After saying that, she turned to leave. Lu Kuang hurriedly pulled her back and roared, Are you crazy? Lu Banzwang looked straight at Lu Kuang. Brother, if your brother is being hunted, what will you do? Lu Kuang took a deep breath, and then he said solemnly, Girl, that's the Firmament World's wanted list. It's issued by the Realm Protection Alliance, the Realm Protection Alliance. Lu Banzwang said softly, It's precisely because it's issued by the Realm Protection Alliance that I have to go. After saying that, she turned to leave. Behind her, Lu Kuang roared, "You'll be expelled from the family." Lu Banzwang didn't even turn her head. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 230. Ling Family. A man snuck out of the Ling family's mansion. When he saw that no one had noticed him, he sprinted away. However, before he could leave the alley, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of him. Seeing the middle-aged man, the man's expression froze, but he quickly recovered and smiled. "Dad, what are you doing?" This man was precisely Ling Han. The middle-aged man said in a low voice, "Are you going to the Azure Prefecture?" "Azure Province?" Ling Han's expression was blank. "What Qing Province? What am I going to do in Qingzhou?" The middle-aged man continued to stare at Ling Han and did not speak. Finally, Ling Han smiled sheepishly. "Father, I'm just going out for a drink, really." The middle-aged man shook his head. "I know a little about the matter between you and that Yi Xian, Dao. Since he can make all of you willingly call him Big Brother, he must not be an ordinary person. I will not stop you from associating with such a person." "But..." Ling Han pursed his lips. "Father, just say the but directly." The middle-aged man sighed. "Kid, do you know that this is the firmament world's wanted order? Once this order appears, it means that he is an enemy of the Realm Protection Alliance. It could even be said that they were enemies of the firmament world. Our Ling family isn't weak in the Central Divine Prefecture, but if we make an enemy out of the Realm Defense Alliance, we'll be overestimating ourselves." Ling Han was silent. The middle-aged man continued, "Now that the firmament world is in chaos, the world protectors have withdrawn from the Azure Water Province and the Azure Province. It is clear that they are abandoning these two provinces. That Yi Xian has allied with some people to protect the Azure Province. Do you think the World Protectors Alliance will let him go?" Ling Han smiled bitterly. "Father, he and I are brothers." The middle-aged man said, "You and I are father and son. And the Ling family, will you feel at ease if you implicate the Ling family?" Ling Han was silent for a long time. In the end, he looked at the middle-aged man and said, "Father, Brother Yi has offended the Dark Realm and the Kuraki Academy, but he is still alive. Do you think he is an ordinary person? Moreover, according to my knowledge, he has already attained the Sword Emperor realm. Does our Central Divine Continent have a Sword Emperor less than 20 years old?" The middle-aged man was silent. Ling Han continued, "Father, I am a member of the Ling clan, and will never forget the Ling clan. I'm talking about camaraderie, and you're talking about benefits. It's fine, I'll talk from the perspective of benefits. Although Brother Yi is being targeted by the Realm Protection Alliance, from another point of view, this also proves that he is extraordinary. Otherwise, the Realm Protection Alliance would have directly killed him instead of issuing a wanted order." When he spoke up to hear, he walked over to the middle-aged man and said, "Moreover, Brother Yi is already the Sword Emperor. How could such a young Sword Emperor be ordinary in the future?" The middle-aged man looked at Ling Han. "What are you trying to say?" Ling Han said in a low voice, "The Ling clan removed my name, so I am no longer a member of the Ling clan. My actions in going to Qing province to provide support have nothing to do with the Ling clan, but my heart is still with the Ling clan. If Brother Yi and I can get through this, it would be a great thing for the Ling family to get to know a future Sword Celestial, or even a great Sword Celestial." The middle-aged man said coldly, "What if we can't?" Ling Han broke into a grin and said, "I will only be sacrificed. And not implicate the family." "What nonsense are you spouting?" The middle-aged man said angrily, "What do you mean by sacrificing yourself?" The old man thinks it's possible. At this time, an old man suddenly appeared on the scene. Behind the old man, there were two more people, both of whom were people with real power in the Ling clan. And the old man in the lead was the Ling clan's great elder, who had great power. The old man looked at Ling Han. "If you leave this place, I will remove your name from the Ling clan. If you are in trouble in the future, the Ling clan will not help you. Do you have no regrets?" Ling Han shook his head. "No regrets." The old man nodded. Go! Ling Han turned and ran, while the middle-aged man panicked and wanted to stop Ling Han, but was stopped by the old man. The middle-aged man glared at the old man. Great Elder, he's not your son, is he? The Great Elder shook his head. You should know his temper. If you don't let him go, he won't. If you don't let him go, he won't leave the matter at that. Moreover, what he said before might not be unreasonable. Yi Xian was able to survive after offending the Dark Realm and Kuraki Academy. This person is not ordinary, and is worth befriending. The middle-aged man shook his head. That's the Realm Protection Alliance. It's not the same. Why doesn't the Realm Protection Alliance dare to kill him directly? The Great Elder asked. Because he is not ordinary, why can't the Ling clan take a gamble? With the friendship between Ling Han and him, if Yi Xian becomes a great sword celestial in the future, or even beyond, it will be a great thing for the Ling clan, isn't it? The middle-aged man was silent for a long time, and finally, he shook his head and sighed. He is my son. The Great Elder said softly, but he is also a member of the Ling clan, and seeking benefits for the Ling clan is his duty. Moreover, he has made up his mind, and you can't stop him. The middle-aged man looked at the end of the alley and said softly, he's grown up. In front of the city gate, Lu Banzwang stood quietly, and beside her was Ling Han, Gan Wei, Lin Yunxian, and the others, 7 people. The bandit mercenary group and Yi Xian had a total of 9 people, and now there were 7 people here, which meant that there was still 1 person missing. Beside Lu Banzwang, Ling Han suddenly said, Big sister, have you contacted Yi Li yet? Lu Banzwang said calmly, wait for another 15 minutes, if he doesn't come, we'll leave. Ling Han nodded, okay. Lu Banzwang looked at everyone present. I think Big Sister already knows the whole story. This time, when we go to Qing Province, we won't be facing ordinary great beasts, we'll be facing countless elites of the Azure Firmament world. If there are any difficulties, you can choose not to go, and no one will blame you. Since you're brothers, you'll understand. Not far away, Gan Wei shook his head. Of course, if Brother Yi is in trouble, we'll leave. To be honest, this is not the right thing to do, and now that he is in trouble again, we can't just sit back and watch no matter what. Otherwise, what kind of brothers are we? Of course, if there are any difficulties, you can choose not to go, as Big Sister said, we're all brothers, we'll understand. Lin Yunxian suddenly said, those who came, I think there won't be any problems. But this Yi Li, I'm afraid he's in trouble. As she said this, she looked at Lu Banzwang. Big sister, Yi Li usually doesn't like to talk, but at this critical moment, if he's not in trouble, he'll definitely stand up. I think he's in trouble, big sister, let's contact him and ask him. Lu Banzwang thought for a moment, then nodded. She crushed a voice transmitting talisman, but there was no response. After 15 minutes, there was still no response, so Lu Banzwang said, let's go to Qing Province. After saying this, everyone left, heading straight for Qing Province. Blood Sect. After knowing that Yi Xian was on the Firmament World's wanted list, the whole Blood Sect was in an uproar. Inside the palace, the people of Blood Sect were all extremely excited. That Yi Xian is actually on the wanted list. The heavens want him dead. Yi Xian, the Blood Sect, must pay with his blood. Charge into Qing Province, capture Yi Xian alive, and wash away the shame of our Blood Sect. Inside the palace, everyone spoke one after another. It was very lively. However, Blood Sect's sect master, Shui Yu, didn't say a word. An old man walked to Shui Yu's side and softly said, Sect master doesn't seem happy? Shui Yu slightly shook his head, a trace of confusion in his eyes. Yi Xian is only at the Divine Combination Realm. To the Realm Defense Alliance, he's not even an ant. Why didn't the Realm Defense Alliance directly kill him and instead offered such a high reward? Are they afraid of something? The old man said in a deep voice, Sect Master, forgive me for being blunt, but no matter what, our Blood Sect should enter Qing Province and get a share. As he said this, he glanced at the people in the palace. Sect Master should know that they want to go to Qing Province. Right now, Qing Province is a place for us cultivators to get rich, and for our Blood Sect, it's an excellent place to cultivate. Some of the disciples who went to Kanglin province before came back with a great increase in their cultivation. Many of the disciples in the sect are envious. Sect master previously ordered us not to let our disciples go to Qing province. Many people are already resentful towards Qing province. Shuiyu glanced at the blood sect disciples below. Their eyes were filled with excitement. These disciples didn't have much desire for revenge, they just wanted to go to Qing province to get rich and cultivate. Next to Shuiyu, the old man continued, "Sect master, the Qing prefecture doesn't have any realm protectors. For our sect, no, for the entire Devil Dao, it's an excellent place to practice cultivation. If we don't go there and miss this golden opportunity, it'll be a disaster for our sect." As he said this, he slightly paused, then continued, "Almost all the Devil Dao forces are going." Shuiyu glanced at the old man. "Elder Imo also wants to go?" The old man nodded. "If there's enough blood, my blood transformation art will definitely reach a higher level." Shuiyu pondered for a moment, then stood up. "To Qing province." The palace instantly erupted. Not only the blood sect, but countless families and sects of Qing province, especially the Devil Dao forces, also invaded Qing province. Because Qing province without a boundary protector was a dreamlike place for them to cultivate. In a few days at most, Qing province would become hell on earth. As for the frigid North sect, the entire sect was concealing the matter of Qing province. Obviously, they didn't want Yi Ling to know Yi Xian's current situation. Qing province. Somewhere in a mountain range, Lian Wanli was sprinting along with Yi Xian. Behind her and Yi Xian were more than a dozen Dharma realm cultivators and hundreds of experts. She wasn't afraid of anyone in a one-on-one fight, even if they were in the Dharma controlling realm. However, there were too many people, and Yi Xian hadn't recovered yet, so she had no choice but to escape with Yi Xian. After an unknown period of time, she suddenly stopped, because in front of her was a towering mountain wall that pierced through the clouds. There was nowhere to run. Lian Wanli glanced at the people in front of her, then looked down at Yi Xian. "I admire you very much, but there are so many of them, I can't beat them. Hand over Yi Xian." At this moment, the black-clothed old man suddenly said coldly, "If you hand over Yi Xian, we can let you go." Lian Wanli's eyes lit up. "You mean it?" The black-clothed old man looked coldly at Lian Wanli. Of course, Lian Wanli didn't waste her breath and directly tossed Yi Xian towards the black-clothed old man. Everyone present was stunned. Is she really going to hand him over? The black-clothed old man was stunned as well. Obviously, he hadn't expected Lian Wanli to hand him over just like that. He instinctively wanted to catch it, but at this moment, the expression of an old man in the Dharma realm nearby changed drastically. "Watch out." As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xian, who was flying towards the black-clothed old man, suddenly stopped, and a figure charged towards him. It was Lian Wanli with the Azure Dragon saber in hand. The black-clothed old man's expression instantly changed when he saw this. At this moment, he didn't have time to think, and he suddenly punched forward with his right hand. At this moment, Lian Wanli's saber arrived. Under the gazes of countless people, the black-clothed old man was directly slashed from the top of his head to the bottom. The black-clothed old man's body instantly split apart, and blood and internal organs sprayed all over the ground. Lian Wanli put away the Azure Dragon saber, turned around, and walked over to Yi Xian's side. She waved her hand, and a dragon throne appeared in front of her. She sat on the dragon throne with the Azure Dragon saber in her hand as she looked at the hundreds of people in front of her. "Wait a moment, I'll be right there." As soon as she finished speaking, she took out a purple comb and gently combed her slightly messy hair. P.S. I recommend a novel called Medical Style Martial God. Don't miss it if you like urban novels. Many readers say that I rarely interact with readers. Today, I'll interact with everyone. Yes, everyone can talk to me about how handsome I am. If you think I'm so handsome that you can't describe it with words, then you can keep quiet, I understand. Genius in a second, remember this site's address. Mobile version. Chapter 231. The surroundings were deathly silent. Everyone was looking at Lian Wanli, who was combing her hair on the dragon throne. This was a classic example of fighting but not messing up one's hair. Of course, the main point wasn't the combing, but the fact that Lian Wanli had just instantly killed a Dharma realm expert. It was an instant kill, not a victory. Lian Wanli didn't look old, but her strength. She might even be a monstrous genius that was even more monstrous than Yi Xian. There was no one here who wasn't fearful. However, Yi Xian was right before them, and no one wanted to give up. Killing Yi Xian would make them rich instantly, and they would at least be able to save 100 years of hard work. Besides that, killing Yi Xian would allow them to gain fame. Presently, Yi Xian was famous in the firmament world, so killing him would definitely cause their fame to rise explosively and make their names known throughout the firmament world. Even then, some people still retreated. After they witnessed Lian Wanli's terrifying strength, they decisively chose to retreat. After all, Lian Wanli wasn't the only one in front of them, there was also Yi Xian. If Yi Xian was allowed to recover, then how terrifying would their strengths be? So, some people decisively chose to leave. However, there were only a few, and there were less than 10 of them. The rest were accumulating strength and were ready to attack at any moment. Nearby, after Lian Wanli finished combing her hair, she carried Yi Xian and placed him on the dragon throne, and then she held the azure dragon saber in her hand as she turned around and walked towards the hundreds of people. The eyes of the hundreds of people were filled with extreme fear when they witnessed this scene, and some of them couldn't help but take a few steps back. Lian Wanli didn't attack right away, and she suddenly stopped. She gazed at the hundreds of people and asked, "Yi Xian is on the World Protector rankings, right?" A Dharma realm expert from the Situ clan said in a low voice, "Since you know that Yi Xian is on the World Protector rankings, then you should be aware that Yi Xian has violated the rules of the world. So long as he's from the firmament world, then everyone has the right to kill him. If you insist on protecting him, then you're going against the entire firmament world." Lian Wanli thought for a moment and said, "Then should I hand him over to all of you?" Everyone was stunned. Lian Wanli shook his head again. No. With such a high reward from the Realm Protection Alliance, if I hand him over to them, I will instantly become rich. The spectators revealed strange expressions when they heard this. In the beginning, they thought that Lian Wanli intended to protect Yi Xian, but now it would seem like he intends to take everything for himself. The few myriad law realm experts from the Situ clan were also a little dumbfounded. Wasn't this woman going to protect Yi Xian? Lian Wanli looked at the crowd and said, "Let me tell you, this Yi Xian is mine. No one can take him away from me. We can't let her take it all for herself." At this moment, someone suddenly shouted, "Take it all." Everyone came back to their senses and hurriedly agreed. Lian Wanli looked at the crowd coldly. "This Yi Xian is in my hands. Why can't I take it for myself? Everyone who sees it has a share." Someone suddenly said, "Why did everyone come to Qing province with great difficulty?" Naturally, it was for money. This Yi Xian is priceless, and any heaven-rank treasure would be enough for us to eat for a lifetime if we were to obtain it. We can't let this woman take it all for herself. Everyone who sees it has a share. Could this woman be deliberately stalling for time? How could that be? This woman isn't stupid. Why would she go against the entire Azure world and the Realm Defense Alliance for Yi Xian? No one noticed that Yi Xian's fingers, who was lying on the dragon throne, trembled slightly. Lian Wanli held the azure dragon saber with an expressionless face. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, an old man walked out. "Miss, everyone came from afar to seek wealth. How about this? You take the big share and we take the small share. How about this?" Although some people were a little unhappy, they didn't dare to say anything. Who told her to be so powerful? Lian Wanli pondered slightly as if he was considering it. Seeing this scene, the old man, "This chapter is not finished, please continue." The old man was delighted and felt that there was a chance. He immediately said, "Miss, you are a genius. We are not willing to be enemies with you, as long as you are willing to share this Yi Xian with us." Lian Wanli suddenly shook his head. "It's not impossible to share, but there are too many people. If we divide the spoils, how much can one person get? I have a suggestion. The Dharma realm can stay, and everyone can hand over this Yi Xian to the Realm Defense Alliance. Then we can divide the bounty. Hearing this, the expressions of those who weren't in the Dharma realm turned extremely ugly. As for those in the Dharma realm, they seemed to be thinking about it. At this moment, a gray-robed old man from the Situ clan suddenly walked out and looked coldly at Lien Wanli. I think you want to divide us. Divide? The spectators instantly became slightly vigilant when they heard this, because they noticed that the situation was slightly off. Lien Wanli said indifferently, divide? Are you willing to share the bounty with these ants? In any case, I don't want to. The gray-robed old man stared at Lien Wanli. If you don't want to divide us, that's fine. So long as you kill this Yi Xian, the Situ clan is willing to stand on your side. In any case, the Realm Defense Alliance wants dead people, not alive ones. How about it? Kill Yi Xian. Everyone was looking at Lien Wanli. Lien Wanli nodded, and then she pointed at Yi Xian who sat on the dragon throne. He's right there. Go kill him yourself. Go kill him. The gray-robed old man's expression was slightly unsightly because he wasn't sure of Lien Wanli's true intentions. If Lien Wanli intended to protect Yi Xian, then he had no doubt that Lien Wanli would attack him. But if he didn't go over, then how would he know Lien Wanli's true intentions? Presently, the enmity between Yi Xian and the Situ clan could be said to be in a stalemate. At this moment, Yi Xian was at his weakest. So, if he didn't kill Yi Xian now, then he would probably have even fewer chances in the future. When he thought up to here, the gray-robed old man glanced at the others around him. They nodded slightly, and then they walked towards Yi Xian who sat on the dragon throne. 8 experts at the Dharma realm. Even though they were walking towards Yi Xian, their gazes were constantly locked onto Lien Wanli, and all of them were extremely vigilant. On the other hand, Lien Wanli held the Azure Dragon Saber in her hand and didn't have any intention of attacking. In next to no time, the 8 of them arrived before the dragon throne. The gray-robed old man turned around to glance at Lien Wanli, but Lien Wanli still didn't attack. The gray-robed old man relaxed when he saw this scene, and he relaxed his vigilance. Because it was too late even if Lien Wanli attacked now. The others around him were sufficient to resist Lien Wanli, whereas he only needed less than half a breath of time to kill Yi Xian. Right at this moment, Yi Xian, who was lying on the dragon throne, suddenly opened his eyes. This. 2 rays of light shot out from his eyes like 2 bolts of lightning. This sudden and unexpected event caused the gray-robed old man's expression to instantly change violently. All his attention was originally on Lien Wanli, so he'd utterly not expected that Yi Xian would suddenly attack. Under such circumstances, he could only rely on his instincts to cover his vital points with his arms. This. 2 rays of light directly chopped off his arms, and he seized this opportunity to retreat with the hope of pulling apart the distance between him and Yi Xian. However, a flying sword was even swifter than him, and it instantly pierced through the space between his brows. The surroundings fell silent. Everyone's gazes moved from Lien Wanli to the nearby dragon throne. Yi Xian sat on the dragon throne with his eyes closed, and his entire body emanated a strand of dark black sword insight. Yi Xian had awoken. Everyone was extremely vigilant. On the other hand, those experts at the Dharma realm who stood before Yi Xian had retreated successively as well, and they pulled apart the distance between them and Yi Xian. The Sword Emperor. Presently, Yi Xian was the Sword Emperor, and he was able to gather the energy of the heavens and the earth and gather the energy of space. From a certain perspective, Yi Xian was actually equivalent to the Dharma realm. If there wasn't a gap between their realms, then no one in the same realm of cultivation would be a match for Yi Xian. This chapter isn't finished. Please continue to the next page. Meanwhile, a voice resounded from within the crowd. This person's sword insight is rather chaotic and his aura is low. Obviously, he hasn't fully recovered from his injuries. If we still don't join forces now, then we'll only be slowly played to death by them while suspecting each other and being fearful of each other. Lien Wanli looked towards the center of the crowd, and her brows knit together slightly. Because she didn't see the person who spoke those words. Meanwhile, the voice resounded once more. Attack together. No matter how monstrous their geniuses are, they'll definitely die. Situ clan, if all of you don't take the lead, then I'm afraid we'll never have the chance to avenge the Situ clan. The 7 experts from the Situ clan exchanged glances when they heard this, and then they charged directly at Yixian in the next moment. When they saw someone take the lead, the remaining experts instantly stopped holding back and charged over in succession. Lian Wanli walked over to Yixian with the Azure Dragon Saber in her hand, and her face was expressionless as she gazed at the group that charged at her. The 7 experts at the 10,000 Dharma realm charged at the forefront, and the aura they released was like a torrent that pressed down on Yixian and Lian Wanli. The aura arrived before the person arrived. Lian Wanli tilted her head slightly and asked, "How long will it take?" 2 hours. Yixian replied. "Wait for your death." After she finished speaking, Lian Wanli turned around and left. Yixian hurriedly said again, 1 hour. Lian Wanli turned around again, and with the Azure Dragon Saber in her hand, she suddenly slashed forward vertically. Azure Dragon Break. As soon as she finished speaking, a 300 m long Azure Saber energy suddenly slashed down from the sky, and within the Saber energy, the soul of an Azure Dragon roared with its head raised. As soon as the Saber energy appeared, the aura released by the 7 experts at the 10,000 Dharma realm instantly vanished. At the same time, the powerful Saber energy directly shook the 7 people in front of her and pushed them over 300 m back. It should be said that the 7 of them took the initiative to retreat after they noticed the Saber energy. Retreat for now. At that moment, the 7 of them practically made this decision at the same time. As for the others who charged over, they didn't have the ability to react, and the Saber energy descended, boom. In an instant, the ground instantly cracked, and nearly a dozen people were instantly swallowed by the Saber energy, and on the ground, there was a gully that was tens of feet deep. The power of one saber was so terrifying. And at this moment, there was a sudden change, and an afterimage flashed in the field. Law Imperial Realm. Lian Wanli's eyes narrowed slightly, and with one hand, she slashed forward with the saber. The saber fell but was blocked by a finger. That finger blocked the blade, not the back of the saber. True Law Imperial Realm. Lian Wanli's pupils shrank slightly, and her right hand suddenly pressed down. The afterimage instantly retreated a distance of several feet, but the next moment, the person took a step forward, and with both hands holding the Azure Dragon Saber in her hand, an afterimage suddenly appeared behind her without warning. True Law Imperial Realm. 2 True Law Imperial Realm. Moreover, they were top assassins. At this critical moment, Lian Wanli's right hand decisively abandoned the Azure Dragon Saber, and her left hand turned around and swept horizontally. The moment she made her move, a cold light slashed down from her left shoulder. Pissed, Lian Wanli's left arm instantly flew out, and she took the opportunity to dodge to the side. In the process, blood spurted out from her left shoulder in a beautiful arc. After Lian Wanli stopped, she glanced at her left shoulder, and there was nothing there. She was stunned. At this moment, not far away, the 2 True Law Imperial Realm experts were about to attack Yixian, but a dragon's roar came from the side. The 2 turned to look at Lian Wanli, and with the Azure Dragon Saber in her right hand, Lian Wanli walked in front of Yixian and turned to look at the 2 True Law Imperial Realm experts not far away. We agreed to buy him an hour, so an hour, not a breath less. Blood flowed from her left shoulder. End of this chapter. Chapter 232. Lian Wanli held the Azure Dragon Saber in her right hand while the tip of the saber touched the ground, and the faint roar of a dragon resounded from the blade. She just stood before Yixian and refused to budge an inch. An old man stood before Lian Wanli. The old man had white hair, a face covered in wrinkles, and eyes that were sharp like an eagle's. Not too far away from the old man was a black-clothed man who floated in midair. His appearance couldn't be seen clearly, and his aura was completely absent. It was as if he didn't exist. A true defense realm expert. Not to mention Pine Prefecture, such an expert was a top-rate expert even in the Central Divine Prefecture. The white-haired old man sized up Lien Wanli and said indifferently, "They say that the #1 genius of Pine Prefecture is that in Lanxiu. Actually, you aren't inferior to her, but you've concealed your strength too deeply. If we hadn't joined forces, it would be extremely difficult to sever an arm of yours." Lien Wanli glanced at the white-haired old man and said with a smile, "I didn't expect that 2 true defensive Dharma realms would be deployed. Looks like you're a little afraid." The white-haired old man said indifferently, "He attained the Sword Emperor realm at such a young age. My Sidhu clan isn't afraid of such natural talent. However, it's better to eliminate him now just in case." The Sidhu clan. Lien Wanli glanced at the white-haired old man, and then she turned to look at the black-clothed man by the white-haired old man's side. "I presume you're from the dark dimension since you're able to conceal your aura to such an extent. All this while, this king thought that your dark world had completely disappeared. I never thought that you were waiting for an opportunity to make a move and prepare to kill Yi Xian." The black-clothed man said, "Miss Lien, I know you're not simple, and we've never thought of becoming enemies with you. Our only target is Yi Xian. We won't stop you if you leave. But don't blame us for being merciless if you continue meddling in our business." "All for Yi Xian." Lien Wanli turned to look at Yi Xian. "I wouldn't have allied with you if I knew you had so many enemies. This king has suffered a great loss this time." After saying that, she turned to look at the man in black and the white-haired old man. As the saying goes, a day as husband and wife means 100 days of love. This king and him? Oh, this king has nothing to do with him, nothing to do with him. As she spoke to this point, she seemed to have flown into a rage out of humiliation. Immediately, she raised the azure dragon blade and charged towards the white-haired old man and his companion. The white-haired old man narrowed his eyes. "I gave you face, but you refused." With that, he waved his sleeves forward. Boom! The entire ground was lifted up in an instant, and like a wave, it instantly drowned out everything within 10,000 miles. Meanwhile, a saber suddenly tore through the air from the uprooted ground, and a strand of saber chi slashed towards the white-haired old man before the saber even arrived. The white-haired old man's face was as cold as frost. When the saber chi arrived above his head, he reached out with his right hand and swung it up and down. In an instant, the space in front of him rippled like a wave, and the saber chi that stretched for thousands of miles instantly twisted and folded before disappearing. True Defense Realm. The True Defense Realm could use space, but it could not physically change space. On the other hand, the True Defense Realm could distort all things in space, but it could not change the structure of space. As for the True Defense Realm, it was no longer just able to distort space, but could also change the structure of space. There were 3 realms, and each realm had a fundamental difference. And this difference was often difficult to overcome. The higher one went, the harder it was to challenge those of a higher realm. At this moment, Lien Wanli's saber chi was directly twisted, and then the old man changed the structure of space, using space to directly erase it. After the saber chi disappeared, Lien Wanli suddenly appeared above the old man's head. The old man was expressionless as he punched out. It was a very simple punch, but it contained a mysterious law of divine ability. The space where Lien Wanli was suddenly trembled, and the next moment, she was directly sent flying. This time, she flew directly in front of Yi Xian. As soon as she landed, the ground under her feet shook violently, and the ground within a radius of hundreds of feet cracked. It was extremely terrifying. But the next moment, Lien Wanli suddenly disappeared from where she was. The next moment, a long saber pierced through the air and appeared in front of the white-haired old man. On the long saber's blade, there was an angry green dragon roaring. The white-haired old man was expressionless as he took a step forward, and his right hand pointed forward with a finger. In his opinion, this finger would definitely be able to block the saber. The saber fell. Bang! The white-haired old man was instantly forced back more than 10 feet. When he stopped, the ground behind him instantly collapsed into a deep pit that was dozens of feet deep. At the same time, his 2 fingers had already been shattered. The white-haired old man's face was extremely gloomy. He lifted his head to look at Lien Wanli, and a murderous intent surged in his eyes. I have underestimated you. However, you have successfully angered the old man. Don't worry, the old man will not kill you. Later, the old man will make you wish you were dead." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward swiftly. As he charged, numerous seemingly corporeal afterimages appeared behind him. His speed was swift to the limit. The corners of Lian Wanli's mouth curled up slightly into a savage smile as she stood before Yi Xian. She suddenly leaped up and swiftly slashed down with the saber in her hand. Slash! Bang! A monstrous aura surged out from the azure dragon saber. At the same time, a green dragon suddenly struggled free from the saber and transformed into a ray of light that slashed down. Meanwhile, the old man arrived before her. Bang! An explosion that shook the heavens resounded, and then the two figures retreated explosively. The white-haired old man stopped after moving over 30 m back, whereas Lian Wanli was forcefully pushed over 100 m back. She just stopped when a wisp of blood slowly seeped out from the corner of her mouth. On the other hand, blood was still flowing from her left shoulder. At this moment, she was in an extremely bad state. The injury on her left shoulder and the injury she suffered right now could be said to have worsened her injuries. She was at the true 10,000 transformation realm, but even she was unable to surmount a realm of cultivation to kill a true imperial law realm expert. Of course, if the old man and the black-haired old man hadn't joined forces and severed her arm at the beginning, then she might have given it a try. However, her chances of winning weren't great. In the distance, the white-haired old man glanced at his body. The clothes on his chest had split open, and there was a saber mark there. It wasn't deep, and it had just broken through his skin. The white-haired old man's expression was extremely gloomy when he witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, the black-clothed figure suddenly said, "Let's join forces to prevent any unexpected events from occurring." The white-haired old man hesitated for a moment before he nodded. Obviously, he didn't want any unexpected events to occur. At this moment, Yi Xian's greatest backer was gone, so it was the best time to kill Yi Xian. In next to no time, both of them charged directly at Lian Wanli and Yi Xian. This time, both of them didn't hold back at all, and they sought to kill with a single strike. They intended to kill Lian Wanli first, and then kill Yi Xian. In the distance, Lian Wanli raised the azure dragon saber and was about to charge out when a hand suddenly pulled her back. Lian Wanli turned her head, and Yi Xian had already stood up. He pulled Lian Wanli behind him and made her sit on the dragon throne. Lian Wanli looked straight at Yi Xian. "This king's arm is gone. It's very uncomfortable." Yi Xian said softly, "I'll kill them to vent your anger." With that, he turned to face the black-clothed figure and the white-haired old man. 1 against 2? Impossible. Yi Xian was extremely clear about this. With his current strength, it was impossible for him to defeat the two of them. It would be difficult for him to even fight one of them. The two of them were getting closer and closer. At this moment, a black Xiaota suddenly appeared between Yi Xian's brows. At the moment the black Xiaota appeared, Yi Xian's features instantly twisted. Prison pagoda. The mysterious woman had once told him not to activate the prison pagoda rashly, especially when he didn't have any Dao laws. But at this moment, he had no choice but to fight with his life on the line. If he fought with his life on the line, he might have a chance, but if he didn't, he wouldn't have a chance at all. At the moment the prison pagoda appeared, the heavens and the earth suddenly darkened, and a ghastly aura instantly enveloped the surroundings. In an instant, everyone felt as if they'd fallen into purgatory. At the same time, a pitch-black prisoner character appeared above everyone's heads. P.S. The entire area was out of electricity due to the heavy snow. I ran over 10 kilometers with my computer, and finally found electricity. I don't know if you guys believe me. If you don't, I'll think of another. Chapter 233. The Pagoda of Hell. It could be said to be his greatest trump card, but he hadn't dared to use it until now. Because he'd tried once in the past, and he'd almost killed himself that time. But now, he had no choice but to use it. Because at this moment, he had no other choice. It was still the same. If he fought with his life on the line, he might be able to survive, but if he didn't, he would definitely lose his life. As for exactly how strong the pagoda of hell was, he had no idea because he didn't understand it at all. After the pagoda appeared, the expressions of the two true Imperial Magic Realm experts before Yi Xian instantly changed. The white-haired old man looked at Yi Xian with slight terror, or to be more precise, at the black xiaota that had appeared between Yi Xian's brows. His eyes were filled with disbelief. What is that? It wasn't just the white-haired old man, everyone here was shocked as well. This was because everyone felt extremely uncomfortable after the appearance of this black tower. At this moment, Yi Xian felt like he was about to explode, and it was extremely painful. Moreover, he felt like something was flowing out of his body. Besides that, his soul was actually faintly discernible as if it was about to be separated from his body. Hold on. Yi Xian bit the tip of his tongue and forced himself to remain clear-headed. If he didn't hold on now, then he would really be finished. The black-clothed person by the white-haired old man's side suddenly said, "What is he going to do?" The white-haired old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. He seems to be about to take out some sort of powerful treasure. "Do we attack?" asked the black-clothed person. The white-haired old man shook his head. "Let's wait for now. Since that thing was able to cause the heavens and earth to change color before it even appeared, it's definitely extraordinary. Let him take it out and let us see exactly what it is." When he spoke up to hear, a trace of greed flashed through his eyes. Because it was very likely that the treasure that Yi Xian was about to take out was an extraordinary treasure that was above the heaven grade. The white-haired old man was quite excited when he thought up to hear. The people behind the white-haired old man and the black-clothed person didn't leave. Even though they were slightly fearful, they weren't very afraid. Because in front of them, there were two true defensive Dharma realm experts. With these two experts at the front, they were naturally fearless. Just like that, everyone was waiting for Yi Xian to take out that divine item. Under everyone's gaze, the black xiaota between Yi Xian's eyebrows gradually came out. At this moment, Yi Xian's facial features were distorted to an appalling degree. Even if Yi Ling were here, he wouldn't be able to recognize him immediately. That was because his facial features had been twisted to the point of being deformed. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. What exactly was this Yi Xian going to bring out? Everyone was curious. About a quarter of an hour later, the black xiaota suddenly flashed out between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Everyone looked at the black xiaota, their eyes filled with curiosity. Lil Pagoda floated quietly in the air. Right at this moment, Yi Xian, who was not far away, suddenly pointed angrily at the white-haired old man and the others and roared, "Kill them all!" Just as everyone was still in a state of shock, the black pagoda suddenly shook violently. Above everyone's heads, the black prisoner character suddenly released a black beam of light. This black beam of light directly enveloped everyone. At this moment, no one was able to move. Not a single one of them could move. Even the white-haired old man and the black-clothed person who were at the true Imperial Magic Realm were the same. This chapter is not finished. Please continue to the next page, because no matter how they resisted, it was of no use. Under the black beam of light, they didn't even have the strength to move a finger. Moreover, they were all normal in all aspects, including Xian Qi and their own strength. However, they were unable to resist. That was what terrified them the most. The white-haired old man stared at Yi Xian and was practically roaring hysterically, "What is this? What is this?" Yi Xian hadn't even answered when the black xiaota suddenly trembled, and then everyone here vanished. When they appeared again, they were within a black xiaota, the first level of the pagoda of prisons. Everyone looked around with terror, and it was the same for the white-haired old man. He wanted to resist, but he was unable to. At this moment, the prisoner character above everyone's head suddenly turned blood red. The moment it turned blood red, everyone's body started to rot inch by inch. Numerous shrill cries resounded incessantly. The white-haired old man released his aura and strength madly, but it was of no use. Just like that, everyone gradually rotted away until they died. This was the most terrifying scene because they were watching themselves die. Shrill cries resounded incessantly within the pagoda of prisons. This continued for around 15 minutes before the pagoda of prisons was completely empty, and only a few hundred spatial rings remained. Obviously, the pagoda of prisons only targeted living beings and not those that didn't. Outside the pagoda of prisons, after sensing that everyone in the pagoda had disappeared, Yi Xian relaxed and collapsed. On the ground, Yi Xian lay silently. After around 15 minutes, his limbs suddenly began to twitch. At the same time, all the blood vessels in his body were violently trembling, as if they were about to burst out of his skin. It was an extremely shocking sight. Nearby, Lian Wanli quickly walked over to Yi Xian. Seeing Yi Xian's current appearance, she frowned. Backlash. She had naturally seen everything that had happened just now. The treasure that Yi Xian had taken out had taken everyone away, even the true imperial law realm. This sort of divine item definitely surpassed heaven rank. And Yi Xian was only at the divine unity realm. With his current realm, it was impossible for him to control this sort of divine item. If he forcefully used it, he would definitely suffer a backlash. After a moment of silence, Lian Wanli put away the azure dragon saber, picked up Yi Xian, and turned to leave. Around 15 minutes later, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared. Supreme Lu. At this moment, Supreme Lu's face was terrifyingly gloomy. When Yi Xian had taken out the pagoda of prisons, he hadn't been there because someone had been spying on him. So, he had gone to chase after them. But he hadn't caught anyone. And when he returned, everyone had disappeared. Someone was secretly helping Yi Xian. Supreme Lu glanced around coldly. Under the circumstances that the Realm Defense Alliance wanted Yi Xian dead, there was still someone who dared to secretly help Yi Xian. This was undoubtedly a blatant challenge to the Realm Defense Alliance's authority. However, since the other party dared to go against them for Yi Xian, it was definitely not an ordinary force. Supreme Lu fell silent for a long time before he said solemnly, Yi Xian, pass down the order to investigate Yi Xian again. Starting from Qingqing, his parents and all his relatives must be investigated. Besides that, announce to the world that both Yi Xian and Lian Wanli have perished. Without them, the will of the people in Pine Prefecture will definitely disperse. Even if no one from the Central Divine Prefecture enters Pine Prefecture will still fall into chaos. Supreme Lu. A voice resounded from the sky. Supreme Lu glanced at the surroundings again, and his expression was slightly gloomy. Because it was absolutely not an ordinary force that was able to make a few hundred people vanish without a trace. Besides that, where exactly are Yi Xian and Lian Wanli? However, he didn't have the time to pay attention to them right now because he had something more important to attend to. It was to head to Azure Wave Prefecture and seize the quintessence of Azure Wave Prefecture. Because the time had come. Supreme Lu turned around and left. After he left, a shadow suddenly appeared here, and it glanced at the surroundings before vanishing without a trace. Presently, Pine Prefecture could be said to be the paradise for countless cultivators of the Central Divine Prefecture. Because they could do everything they wanted to do in the past but didn't dare to do here. Countless cloud vessels from the Central Divine Prefecture had entered Pine Prefecture, and numerous people were rushing over every single day. It was especially so for the Devil Dao. Practically all the sects, powers, and clans of the Devil Dao had rushed over here. Because Pine Prefecture was completely unrestrained, so it was undoubtedly a dreamland for them to cultivate in the Devil Dao. They didn't have to sneakily cultivate all sorts of vicious techniques here, didn't have to worry about the displeasure of the various powers, and didn't have to worry about being targeted by the Realm Defense Alliance. They could do as they pleased here, and it was definitely a superb place to cultivate for those who cultivated in the Devil Dao. Because many who cultivated in the Devil Dao emphasized on doing as they pleased. On the other hand, the news of Yi Xian and Lian Wanli's deaths swiftly spread throughout Pine Prefecture thanks to the Realm Defense Alliance's intentional promotion. At the moment they found out about their deaths, the entire prefecture instantly seethed with excitement. After all, The reason Pine Prefecture was able to maintain its current stability was mainly because of them. So long as Yi Xian was present, then the Jiang Kingdom, Ning Kingdom, and the surrounding kingdoms wouldn't dare to act rashly. So long as Lian Wanli was present, then the Great Cloud Empire wouldn't dare to act rashly. It could be said that the two of them had played a crucial role in stabilizing Pine Prefecture. But now, both of them were gone. For a time, Pine Prefecture was in an uproar, and countless people began to make all sorts of plans. Especially in the Great Cloud Empire, some of its vassals had already declared themselves kings. Pine Prefecture itself began to fall into chaos, and with the addition of some cultivators from the Divine Central Continent who had entered Pine Prefecture first, Pine Prefecture could be said to be growing more and more chaotic. Once most of the experts from the Divine Central Continent entered Pine Prefecture, it would truly become a living hell on Earth. Somewhere in the boundless sea, a cloud ship was flying swiftly, and the people on it were all disciples of the Joyful Union sect. There were over 100 of them. They were all the elites of the Joyful Union sect. In a private room on the cloud ship, the sect master of the Joyful Union sect stood silently by the window. Behind him stood an old man. After a long time, the sect master of the Joyful Union sect suddenly said, "It should be true. 2 true law realm experts and hundreds of experts. There's no way that Yi Xian could have survived." Moreover, this news has spread rapidly throughout Pine Prefecture and the Divine Central Continent, so it must be the work of the Realm Defense Alliance. Since it's their doing, it should be confirmed. "So?" asked the old man. The sect master of the Joyful Union sect raised the corner of his mouth and sneered, "Enter Pine Prefecture and capture everyone from Blue Wave's Academy alive. Leave the women, kill all the men, and hang their heads above the city gates of the Jiang Kingdom's imperial capital. The enmity of my Joyful Union sect will naturally be repaid 100-fold. The old man smiled faintly. "That's how it should be." A moment later, a voice suddenly came from the cloud ship. "Yi Xian is dead. Yi Xian is dead." Soon, loud and excited laughter came from the cloud ship. End of this chapter. Chapter 234. After an unknown amount of time, Yi Xian vaguely heard the sound of flowing water. His head felt heavy as if it was filled with lead. Just like this, his consciousness began to blur again. He clenched his fists tightly and instinctively bit the tip of his tongue. The intense pain made him slightly clearer. At this moment, he also sensed his current location. Not far away from him was a waterfall. It was not large, only a few dozen feet wide and 60 feet tall. The water poured down into a small pool below, splashing everywhere. Next to the pool, a woman was sitting on a rock. The woman was leaning over the pool, her jade-white feet in the water. She gently swayed, allowing the water to slowly crash against them. In the mountains, there was the occasional sound of birds chirping. The sound of flowing water, the sound of birds, the pure and refined woman, peace. At this moment, Yi Xian's heart had never been so peaceful before. A moment later, he wanted to get up, but he found that he could not move at all. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. This backlash. At this moment, in front of the pond not far away, the woman seemed to have sensed something. She turned her head to look at Yi Xian. The next moment, the tip of her right foot tapped the surface of the water lightly. The water rippled, and her whole body floated up like a wisp of smoke. In the air, she tapped the surface of the water lightly again and floated towards Yi Xian. She was like a goddess who had descended from the heavens, pure and beautiful. Soon, the woman landed next to Yi Xian. She looked down at him and blinked her pretty eyes. "You're awake?" Yi Xian nodded. "Miss Lian, we're still alive. That's great." Lian Wanli's right hand lightly brushed her hair behind her ear and she smiled. "That treasure of yours is really powerful. It killed 2 true Imperial Law Realm cultivators and hundreds of experts at once. What kind of treasure is that? How is it so powerful?" At this point, she seemed to think of something and she smiled apologetically. "Sorry, I asked too much." Yi Xian smiled. "I don't know what the World Prison Pagoda is either." It was left to me by my mother. This pagoda has its own space. That's right, that sword celestial sister used to live in this pagoda, but she has already left. Seeing that Yi Xian wasn't hiding anything, Wanli's smile suddenly brightened. She didn't know why, but she felt a little happy at this moment. She even temporarily forgot about her broken arm. She didn't ask again, because it was enough. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Miss Lian, you could have left earlier." Wanli looked at Yi Xian. "Leave? If I leave, you'll die." Yi Xian said softly, "If you don't leave, you might die too." Wanli shook her head. She sat beside Yi Xian and raised her head to look at the setting sun in the distant horizon. She said softly, "The Azure province is in chaos. Many people are calculating their own interests, but they have never thought about the future of the Azure province. However, you are willing to stand out at this critical moment. Not for your own benefit, but for the sake of protecting the Azure province." When she spoke up to this point, she withdrew her gaze and gazed at Yi Xian. She said with a smile, "You were very handsome when you resisted those experts from the Central Divine Prefecture. I suddenly realized that no matter how formidable a person is, if that person has no bottom line, doesn't feel pity for all living beings in the world, and only knows how to cultivate, seek the grand Tao, and seek immortality, then such a person can't be considered a person anymore. I look down upon such a person. Moreover, a person's strength can't be measured by strength sometimes." "Then how should it be measured?" asked Yi Xian. Wanli fell silent for a moment, and then she shook her head. "I don't know. However, I feel that you're very strong when you faced those experts from the Central Divine Prefecture by yourself and said that I, Yi Xian, will protect the Azure province." When she spoke up to hear, she gazed at Qin Shi. "This chapter isn't finished. Please continue to the next page." There was a smile in Yi Xian's eyes. "I feel that a man can't be handsome or rich, but he can't be without backbone, and he can't be without responsibility." Yi Xian said seriously, "Miss Lian, I have all these qualities that you speak of. I'm finished. Am I too outstanding?" Wanli suddenly pinched Yi Xian's cheek, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. "You're too shameless." Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Wanli took out a purple medicinal pill and fed it to Yi Xian. "Heal your injuries first. I'll stand guard for you." Yi Xian nodded. His top priority right now was to heal his injuries because the matter wasn't over yet. Moreover, he could only rely on himself for everything now. Healing. Yi Xian calmed his heart and carefully sensed everything within his body. What he feared the most wasn't the backlash, but the irreparable side effects of activating the prison pagoda. This was what he was most worried about at the moment. After carefully inspecting his body, he breathed a sigh of relief because he discovered that he was completely fine. Yi Xian's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly looked inside the prison pagoda, and he was soon dumbfounded. A moment later, Yi Xian smiled bitterly. This was because he discovered that all the top-grade spirit stones that he had obtained earlier had disappeared. Not only had all his top-grade spirit stones disappeared, but even the top-grade spirit stones in the prison pagoda's storage rings had disappeared. Everything in those storage rings was still there, but there weren't any top-grade spirit stones in those storage rings. Needless to say, they had all been swallowed by the prison pagoda. Spirit Qi. It was clear that after activating the prison pagoda once, the prison pagoda needed a large amount of spirit Qi for some reason. However, this was far too much. He originally had several tens of millions of top-grade spirit stones, and there were at least several tens of millions of top-grade spirit stones in those storage rings in the prison pagoda. All of them had been swallowed. Fortunately, he was fine. This was already a great fortune. Yi Xian tried to contact the prison pagoda, but he discovered that there was no movement from the prison pagoda. Not only that, but his main body couldn't enter the prison pagoda, and he couldn't take out all the things in the prison pagoda. It's closed? Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Yi Xian was unwilling to give up, so he tried again, but he still couldn't enter the prison pagoda, and he couldn't even move the prison pagoda. Finally, he confirmed that the prison pagoda was really closed. Without the prison pagoda, it was equivalent to losing an ultimate trump card. After a moment of silence, Yixian suddenly turned to look at Lian Wanli, who was lighting a fire not far away. "Miss Lian, please give me a piece of spirit stone." Lian Wanli pointed a finger, and a spirit stone flew in front of Yixian. Then she continued to light the fire. Not far away, as soon as Yixian got his hands on the spirit stone, it disappeared without a trace. Gone. Yixian's expression froze. After a quarter of an hour, Yixian concluded. First, the prison pagoda was really closed. Second, the prison pagoda required a large amount of spirit energy. Third, if he wanted to reopen the prison pagoda, he might first need to provide it with enough spirit energy. Fourth, it was unknown how many supreme-grade spirit stones the prison pagoda needed. If it wasn't a lot, then it would be fine. If it needed hundreds of millions of supreme-grade spirit stones, where would he find so many supreme-grade spirit stones? Just thinking about it gave him a headache. Most importantly, he didn't know if activating the prison pagoda would affect the existences imprisoned in the prison pagoda. After a long time, Yixian sighed and stopped thinking about these problems. The most important thing now was this chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page, to heal his injuries. After taking the elixir given by Lian Wanli, a wave of extremely pure spirit energy slowly spread throughout his body. Under the nourishment of this pure spirit energy, his body began to slowly recover. Night fell slowly, and the surroundings were quiet. Under the starry sky, Yixian and Lian Wanli sat opposite each other. In front of them was a bonfire, and above the bonfire was a wild rabbit. It was golden and fragrant. The two did not immediately return to the Great Cloud Empire because their injuries had not fully recovered. Lian Wanli suddenly said, "I've received news that a large number of experts from the Central Divine Prefecture have entered Azure Province. They have come with ill intentions." Yixian said softly, "Then let's make sure they don't return." Lian Wanli looked at Yixian, the corners of her mouth lifting slightly. "Good." Sensing Lian Wanli's smile, Yixian was a little taken aback. Upon closer inspection, he realized that Lian Wanli was actually very good-looking. Her appearance was not particularly stunning, but upon closer inspection, one would find that she was very, very pleasing to the eye. The more one looked at her, the more interesting she became. At this moment, Lian Wanli suddenly asked, "Are you looking at me?" Yixian was taken aback, then nodded. "Do I look good?" Lian Wanli asked again. Yixian nodded again. "You look good." Lian Wanli's expression suddenly became a little sad. "How can I look good without an arm?" Yixian said softly, "I'm sorry." It could be said that Lian Wanli had lost her arm because of him. Lian Wanli said with a smile, "It's not your fault." As she spoke, she lay on the ground, looked up at the starry sky, and said softly, "Have a good rest. After tonight, we'll go back tomorrow morning. If you go back, what are you going to do?" Yixian lay down as well. After a moment of silence, he said softly, "Punish evil with evil." Ning Kingdom. Before daybreak, countless cloud ships suddenly entered the Ning Kingdom's territory and headed straight for the imperial capital. Among them were the Joyful Sect, the Joyful Union Sect, and the Blood Sect. These three sects had a blood feud with Yixian. This time, they naturally came for revenge. In addition, the Joyful Union Sect and the Joyful Union Sect were determined to capture Tuoba Yen. In a small pavilion in the Ning Kingdom's imperial palace, Tuoba Yen was dressed in white. She stood quietly in front of a memorial tablet. There were only 3 words on the memorial tablet: Husband Yixian. The moment she learned that Yixian had fallen, she set up this memorial tablet. She had been standing here for a day and a night. At daybreak, a voice suddenly came from outside the door. "Your Majesty, several cloud ships have entered the Ning Kingdom's imperial capital. Your Majesty, please retreat immediately." Tuoba Yen walked in front of the memorial tablet. She gently stroked the memorial tablet and said softly, "Don't worry, I will only have one man in my life, and that is you." After saying that, she turned and left. And in her sleeves were 2 pyroblast talismans. Great Ning Kingdom's imperial capital. 3 cloud ships stopped. Soon, nearly 300 people jumped off the cloud ships. They were all disciples of the Blood Sect, the Joyful Union Sect, and the Joyful Union Sect. The leader of the Blood Sect, Shuiyu, looked around and said with some greed, "Fresh blood." After a moment, his expression suddenly became ferocious. "Slaughter the city." P.S. There is something that has been hidden from everyone for a long time. Actually, I am that is, you know. End of this chapter. Chapter 235. Slaughter the city. When the Blood Sect's master, Shuiyu, spoke these words, the disciples of the Blood Sect instantly seethed with excitement. The Devil Dao. Even though the Devil Dao faction was able to survive in the Central Divine Prefecture, they were still ostracized. Moreover, they didn't dare to take some extreme actions for fear of incurring public wrath. So, the Devil Dao faction was rather restrained in the Central Divine Prefecture, and it was difficult for them to display their might. But now that they were in Pine Prefecture, they had no worries at all. There were no world protectors here, and there were no powers that could resist them here. They could do whatever they wanted here. The strong could be willful to the weak without any reason. Weakness was the original sin. The disciples of the Blood Sect charged into the city and started a massacre. They practically killed anyone they saw. There were troops in the city as well, but they were utterly useless before these cultivators. As for the Joyful Union Sect and the Joyful Sect, they didn't participate in the massacre and headed straight for the Ning Kingdom's imperial palace instead. They were determined to obtain the inner charm physique. In front of the Ning Kingdom's imperial palace, tens of thousands of soldiers had gathered here, and all of them were waiting in battle formation. Behind these soldiers was Tuoba Yen, and there were 2 more Dharma realm experts behind him. Under the gazes of countless people, the sect masters of the Joyful Union Sect and the Joyful Sect led their disciples to the entrance of the imperial palace. The moment they saw Tuoba Yen, the eyes of the Joyful Union Sect's sect masters and the Joyful Gate's sect masters blazed. Meanwhile, Tuoba Yen suddenly said, "Kill." As soon as he finished speaking, countless arrows shot like a storm towards the members of the Joyful Union Sect and the Joyful Sect. The Joyful Union Sect's sect master laughed coldly. He waved his right hand, and a powerful force surged out from his palm. In an instant, all the arrows were actually destroyed by this force. The faces of the Ning Kingdom soldiers instantly turned ghastly pale when they saw this. A law-controlling realm expert. Ordinary soldiers were completely defenseless in front of such a powerhouse, because a powerhouse in the spell-defensive realm had far exceeded the scope of ordinary warriors. The Joyful Union Sect's sect master ignored the soldiers and looked at Tuoba Yen who stood nearby. "No one can protect you this time. Also, don't even think about committing suicide. If you dare to do so, this sect leader will wash the entire Ning country's imperial palace with blood and let them accompany you in death." Tuoba Yen remained expressionless. "Even if I surrender obediently, you won't let them go. There is no need to say anything more. My Ning Empire is weak, so we must die today." "But the people of my Ning Empire, even if we die, we must die with integrity." As her voice fell, the 2 pyroblast talismans in her sleeves suddenly trembled and were about to ignite and detonate. At this moment, 2 hands suddenly pressed down on her shoulders. In an instant, her whole body was unable to move. Tuoba Yen turned around and saw the 2 myriad Dharma realm experts behind her pressing down on her. When Tuoba Yen looked over, the 2 of them lowered their heads slightly. The old man lowered his head slightly and said softly, "I'm sorry." "Sorry." Tuoba Yen was stunned, his eyes filled with disbelief. "Aunt Jiang, Elder Ru, you." The old man was just about to speak when the old woman suddenly said, "The Double Happiness sect has already agreed to return to the Central Divine Prefecture with them once the matter at the Pine Prefecture is resolved. Your Majesty, the Pine Prefecture is finished, and so is the Ning Empire. We have no choice but to find another way out. I hope your Majesty can understand." Tuoba Yen laughed with self-ridicule. "I've imagined countless people would betray me, but I never imagined that it would be the two of you. Because the two of them had watched her grow up, and they could be said to be her closest relatives. However, she hadn't expected that the newest traitor to her would be the person closest to her. The old woman didn't look at Tuoba Yen, and she just lowered her head slightly. Every man for himself, and the heavens and earth destroy him. What a good, every man for himself, heaven and earth destroy him. Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded. When they heard this voice, everyone was instantly stunned. They all turned their heads to look and saw a man slowly walking over. The man wore a long robe, held a sword in his hand, and carried a sword chest on his back. Yi Xian. Everyone was stunned when they saw Yi Xian. Didn't he perish? Tuoba Yen. She stared at Yi Xian while clenching her fists tightly. She just stared at him. Yi Xian walked towards Tuoba Yen, and the soldiers in front of Tuoba Yen hurriedly moved aside. Their eyes were filled with excitement as they gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian. Even though he was from the Jiang Kingdom, he was a state scholar of the Ning Kingdom. Moreover, even a blind man could discern that the relationship between Yi Xian and Tuoba Yen wasn't ordinary. On the other side, the members of the Double Happiness sect and Laughing sect were staring fixedly at Yi Xian as well. The youngest sword emperor of the Central Divine Prefecture. Obviously, they hadn't expected that Yi Xian was still alive. 2 true Defiance Law Realm experts, over a dozen Law Realm experts, and hundreds of top-rate experts had actually been unable to kill Yi Xian. When they thought up to this point, the expressions of the leaders of the Double Happiness sect and Laughing sect turned extremely unsightly. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to arrive in front of Tuoba Yen, who was still being held tightly by the old man and woman. Moreover, they had no intention of letting go. Conversely, they held him even tighter. Tuoba Yen asked, "When did they arrive?" "Almost 15 minutes ago." Yi Xian grinned. "I'd intended to make an appearance at the most critical moment and save the damsel in distress. However, I couldn't bear to watch them bully you like this." As soon as he finished speaking, the sword chest on his back trembled violently, and then a sword suddenly flew out. The arm of the old man who held Tuoba Yen was instantly severed. The old woman's expression changed drastically, and she pulled Tuoba Yen towards her with the intention of using him as a shield. However, a sword suddenly pierced through the center of his forehead. The old woman retreated repeatedly until she stood before the threshold of the hall. She stared blankly at Yi Xian in the distance, so fast, everyone in the surroundings was dumbstruck. An instant kill of a 10,000 Dharma realm expert. Yi Xian could actually instantly kill a 10,000 Dharma realm expert. Nearby, the members of the Double Happiness sect and Laughing sect had extremely solemn expressions. Defeating a 10,000 Dharma realm expert wasn't scary, what was scary was an instant kill. Tuoba Yen glanced at the old woman with a rather complicated expression, but he didn't say anything. On the other side, the old man turned around and fled without a second thought. Just as Yi Xian was about to make a move, Tuoba Yen suddenly shook his head. "Forget it." Yi Xian turned to face Tuoba Yen. Tuoba Yen said softly, "Although they betrayed me this time, they've helped me countless times in the past. Let him go. From now on, we don't owe each other anything." Yi Xian nodded. "I'll listen to you." With that, he turned around and walked towards the members of the Double Happiness sect and Laughing sect. Seeing Yi Xian walk over, the sect master of the Double Happiness sect narrowed his eyes. "Yi Xian, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business, otherwise." Yi Xian suddenly disappeared, and in the next moment, a sword slashed down from above the sect master of the Double Happiness sect's head. One sword to decide life and death. Not only that, but the sword in his hand had also turned pitch black, which was the result of the evil sword intent. Not only that, but he also borrowed the power of heaven and earth. The power of this sword caused everyone's expression to change. Sensing the power of Yi Xian's sword, the sect master of the Double Happiness sect's expression instantly turned solemn. He didn't dare to be careless. He made a gesture with both hands, and the space above his head distorted. Spatial distortion. This was a special ability unique to those at the law-dominating realm, and he wasn't a true law-dominating realm expert. Therefore, he couldn't change the structure of space and could only distort it. There was a world of difference between changing and distorting. However, this distortion couldn't distort Yi Xian's sword. Yi Xian's sword fell straight down, boom. Under everyone's gaze, a figure flew out. This figure was the sect master of the Double Happiness sect. The sect master of the Double Happiness sect flew out dozens of feet, and as soon as he stopped, Yi Xian appeared above his head again. Another sword slashed down. One sword to decide life and death again. At this moment, the sect master of the Double Happiness sect's face instantly turned pale. Boom. Under everyone's gaze, the sect master of the Double Happiness sect flew out again, and this time, before he could stop, a sword suddenly pierced between his eyebrows, nailing him to the ground. The scene instantly fell silent. A law-dominating realm expert died just like that? 3 swords. Although Yi Xian only used 3 swords, in fact, these 3 swords were not simple. Because first, he used the evil sword intent and the power of heaven and earth. In addition, he also used the powerful sword technique of one sword to decide life and death. Most importantly, his sword was a heaven-level sword. After reaching the sword emperor level, he was equivalent to the law-dominating realm. With a powerful sword technique, sword intent, and a heaven-level sword, he was completely capable of killing a law-dominating realm expert. Because at this moment, the power of his sword, the simple distortion of space, was useless against him. Only a true law-dominating realm expert who could change the structure of space could use this kind of divine ability to dissolve the power of his sword. And the sect master of the Double Happiness sect in front of him was not a true law-dominating realm expert. After killing the sect master of the Double Happiness sect with 3 swords, Yi Xian turned to look at the sect master of the Laughing sect not far away. The latter's expression changed and he hurriedly said, "Retreat." With that, he turned and left with the people of the Laughing sect. In fact, he already had the intention to retreat. Because there were 2 true law-dominating realm experts among the people who went to kill Yi Xian. However, those people were gone, but Yi Xian was still alive. This matter was already abnormal. Now that he saw Yi Xian's terrifying strength, he had no more thoughts of fighting. This kind of genius, if there was no super force or super expert behind him, who would believe it? Leave decisively. The sect master of the Double Happiness sect did not hesitate. But Yi Xian did not have the intention to give up. He was most annoyed by this kind of thing. If he did not kill the enemy, then a few days later, the enemy would come back for revenge. Since they were already enemies, he should kill them all, and not leave any future troubles. The moment the sect master of the Laughing sect turned around, from the sword sheath behind Yi Xian, a sword soared into the sky, directly slashing at the sect master of the Laughing sect. Seeing that Yi Xian did not give up, the sect master's expression instantly became ferocious. He suddenly turned around, and his right foot forcefully stomped. Boom! The whole ground trembled violently, and a powerful force vibrated out of his body. At the same time, his hands formed a strange hand seal, and then he pressed it forward, angrily shouting, "Earth Defense Seal." As his voice fell, the ground under his feet suddenly gathered a powerful force, and then with his body as a medium, it slanted out from his hands. This force instantly condensed into a golden round shield in front of him. At this time, Yi Xian's flying sword directly slashed at this golden round shield. Boom! The round shield instantly cracked, and not only that, when it came into contact with Yi Xian's sword intent, this golden round shield began to quickly dissipate. Evil Thought's sword intent. Perceiving this scene, the sect master of the Laughing sect's complexion changed, and he was about to retreat, but at this time, Yi Xian had already arrived above his head. A sword slashed down. The sect master of the Laughing sect's pupils shrank, and he suddenly put his hands together. This time, he actually forcibly stopped Yi Xian's sword, but his legs directly bent, and he almost knelt on the ground. At this time, from the sword sheath on Yi Xian's back, another sword flew out. In front of everyone's eyes, a ray of sword light pierced through the sect master of the Laughing sect's eyebrows. The scene became quiet. Yi Xian waved his right hand, and the storage rings worn by the sect master of the Acacia sect and the sect master of the Laughing sect suddenly flew into his hand, and after a glance, he was suddenly stunned. The two of them added up to more than 70 million top-quality spirit stones. As if discovering something, Yi Xian hurriedly spread his hands, and from the two storage rings, two colorful scrolls suddenly flew out and then steadily landed in his hands. In the left hand, Yin Yang Scripture, Volume 1. In the right hand, Yin Yang Scripture, Volume 2. Out of curiosity, Yi Xian opened one of the scrolls and saw a line of large words: the way of Yin and Yang, the way of heaven and earth, the union of men and women. Below it, there were some vivid illustrations, but some of them were not suitable for children. At this time, Tuoba Yen walked over and asked, "What is this?" Yi Xian hurriedly closed it, and his expression was extremely serious. "I am a pure person." As he spoke, he put away the two scrolls without batting an eyelid. Genius 1 second to remember website. Mobile version. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.